Housing Authority Board to order for June 15. Roll call and posting of the agenda.
Councilmember Basua.
Here.
Councilmember Lopez.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Here.
Councilmember Madrigal.
Here.
Councilmember Perello.
Here.
Councilmember Turan.
Here.
Mayor Zaragoza.
Here.
Thank you, all present. The amended agenda for this meeting was posted in the City Hall Bulletin Board on June 9th, 2021. And I do have an announcement. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54952.3, each member of the Housing Board of Commissioners present will receive $50 pay for convening in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And please join me to salute our Pledge of Allegiance to our flag and a moment of silence for all the individuals that we've lost in this pandemic and other unfortunate results. Thank you so much, and please follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag.
To the flag, States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty.
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Our next item that we have is a presentation. Excuse me. Next item is a presentation I'd like to share, and this is designating the month of June as Alzheimer's and also Brain Awareness Month. And my understanding is that we have a couple of individuals that are going to receive this is Mr. Pedro Chavez and also Gabriela Rodriguez. And let me share this with you at this time. This is a proclamation for Alzheimer's, and Brain Awareness Month for June 2021. The Alzheimer's disease is a progressive neurogenetic brain disorder, tragically robs individuals of their memories and leads to progressive mental and physical impairment. The Alzheimer's disease is the sixth leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause of death in California, the third leading cause of death in Ventura County, and its only cause of death in the top 10 has no cure and no treatment and no way to slow down its progress. More than 5.8 million people in the United States are living with Alzheimer's disease, including 670,000 in California and over 14,000 in Ventura County, and where there is over 1.6 million dedicated caregivers who provide unpaid care at home and in the state of California, valued at over $23 billion. Whereas according to the National Institute of Aging, Alzheimer's disease also indirectly costs businesses in the United States up to $37 billion a year in lost productivity for employees who miss work or leave their jobs to provide care for relatives and loved ones. Whereas early detection and diagnosis of individuals, their families can access treatment and medication, enroll in critical research trials, and fully participate in planning for future and receive help and support for the Alzheimer's Association. The Alzheimer's Association and dementia are disproportionately impacting Latino communities, in particular Latina women, leading to a critical need to focus on providing educational programs and resources to the underserved and unrepresented population. Whereas this is a need to raise awareness about Alzheimer's disease and to honor all the caregivers who support and care for the loved ones with Alzheimer's disease. Now I therefore, John C. Zaragoza, Mayor of the City of Oxnard, do hereby proclaim the month of June 2021 as Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. In the City of Oxnard, I urge all residents to support the services and events bringing awareness of the disease and effect it has on our community. In witness thereof, I have set my hand and caused the great seal of the City of Oxnard to be affixed on this 15th day of June. Mr. Pedro Chavez and Gabriela Rodriguez. Do you have any words you'd like to share with us at this time?
Yes, on behalf of the Alzheimer's Association and this year's walk, we just want to thank everybody, the city of Oxnard. We also have Mr. Anthony Mireles here, who's part of our committee, just creating awareness and really demystifying what it means to have a diagnosis for yourself or a loved one is really important. I myself have lost my grandfather to Alzheimer's and dementia a few years ago, and I just, the more we can create awareness and have these very important educational conversations, and the better for the overall well-being of our community. So on behalf of this year's walk and the committee members who are very passionate about this, thank you, Mayor Zaragoza, council members, and everybody in the community. September 25th, please save the date. We're gonna have a walk in person at the collection, and we hope to see many of you there. So thank you. Start a team or create awareness and have these conversations, please.
And thank you so much for sharing some words with us today. And this proclamation is going to be ready for you tomorrow at City Hall. They're at 300 West 3rd Street. And thank you so much. You know, this is a beautiful proclamation for you and the rest of the individuals. Thank you so much for sharing this afternoon. Thank you. Okay, our next item is item D. And this is public comments, not in the agenda. And of course, this we have about 3 minutes for the speakers, limited to 3 minutes for the speakers. And if there's any items that need to be, that you want, will be referred to the city manager. So the first person that I have as items on the agenda is Mr. Lawrence Paul Stein, followed by Douglas Partell. Mr. Stein.
Mayor, Mr. Stein and Mr. Portello are not available at this time.
Okay, then our next speaker is Rocco Belamonte, followed by Carl Jones. Rocco Belmonte. Is Rocco available, Madam Clerk?
He is. He's signing in now.
Okay, and he's going to be followed by Carl Jones, the president of the Westport Docks Association.
Mr. Belmonte. Rocco Belmonte. Mr. Belmonte, you may unmute by pressing *6.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Okay, great. So I'm also on the dock board with Carl Jones, and we submitted a video that we'd like to play. And based on that, well, let me first introduce it, and then is the video queued up so that we can play it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so what we're doing, and you're going to see in the video, we're requesting an immediate restraining order against the Scarlet Bell from entering the channel, the narrow channel at Viewpoint and Twin Tides, due to damage that it's doing to our seawalls. The damage that we can see now is resulting from its very powerful thrusters that appear to be undermining our seawall foundation, as you're going to see in the attached video. We're not objecting to the Scarlet Bell at all operating in our harbor. In fact, we think it's a nice asset to the harbor, but just from coming down the narrow channels like ours. And we really can't understand their insistence in coming down these small channels after advising them over a year ago about the suspected damage. Ours must be one of the smallest channels that they can turn in to impress their passengers, but you know, they've got a huge harbor to travel in. The letter was sent about a year ago, and we also sent copies of the letter that we sent to them in their response. We understand from code compliance that their agreement with the city said that they can operate anywhere in the harbor, but this was before anybody knew about the damage that they could do to our seawalls. So given what's occurring to the seawalls in Mandalay Bay, we believe the city should do all in its power to prevent unnecessary damage wherever possible. So what we're going to do is show the video so you can see this. And I think we only need to show about 60 seconds of that video in my time. And then Mr. Jones is going to provide more detailed explanation. Can you cue the video now, please?
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, he's going to be followed by Carl Jones, the president of West.
And then Mr. Jones is going to provide more detail. So these are underwater photos, videos. Yep. And then Mr. Jones is going to provide more detail. Videos. And you can start seeing around 35 seconds in some of the crumbling of the actual videos. And you can start seeing around 35 seconds in some of the crumbling of the
Mr.
actual.
Belmonte, you might want to turn down your TV a little bit, please.
Okay. And you can start seeing around 35 seconds in some of the crumbling of the actual.
Okay, the video's been shown.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Jones.
Okay, Carl Jones, president of Westport Dock Association. Carl Jones, you're on.
Mr. Jones? You may unmute by pressing *6.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. As you can see by looking at those videos, we are in the midst of some significant damage being caused to the slope that retains the footing of the seawall. If corrective action can be taken now, we can mitigate any further damage and failure. And that starts really with the Scarlet Bell being re-diverted or prohibited from coming down our small, narrow cul-de-sac channel. The root cause is stemming from the Scarlet Bell charter operation, traveling in and out of this channel designed and intended for residents' boats half the size and smaller of its length, width, and draft of the Scarlet Bell. It enters the channel at between Twin Tides and Viewpoint from the main channel, proceeds to an area where there are no boats present at owners' docks. It provides a little bit of extra space for them to conduct a 180-degree turn to port or counterclockwise. If there were boats there, they would not be able to turn because that boat is so large and comes so close to the docks. And the observations that we see through these videos are that the thrust of the engines used to spin the boat around this short channel to exit is where the area damage is on the 14, 23, 33, and 43, which is the east side of the channel, directly behind their engines. The size of its engines, propellers, are commercial scale. They're being driven in a channel really built for small boats. The fact that it tends to operate on medium to low tides, when the tide is low, so they get under the Channel Islands Bridge, means they're creating much more turbulence that much closer to the bottom of the seafloor, and thus right with the in line with the footings. And it's a direct line and perpendicular to the seawall, as you can see by some of those pictures. Residents' boats, kayaks, normal activity cannot and does not cause this kind of damage. The videos and photos submitted show the damage now extends across those three residents I mentioned. The erosion of soil protecting a stabilized footing has deteriorated and is accelerating compared to the photo of a year ago, the June 29, 2020 letter that we sent to the operator.
30
Their
seconds.
follow-up email suggested they were going to do a video and inspection themselves. They never did that. Compare the videos on the other side. We've got 7 videos total. The east side is where the damage is. The west side shows an intact soil embankment, and that's the way it should look, undamaged. We don't have rocks or boulders, as you can see, that protect it further. So the action needed is the council's got to stop allowing them to enter our channel. We need the city Melrose facilities manager
Your
conduct
time is up.
independent study to confirm our findings and remediate the damage.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Okay, our next speaker is Cynthia Gonzalez, followed by Felix Babrisky. Cynthia Gonzalez.
Ms. Gonzalez? You may unmute by pressing *6. Cynthia Gonzalez?
Hi.
Hi.
Can
You
you
have
hear
3
me?
minutes to speak. Ms. Gonzalez, you are muted. Please unmute by pressing *6. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Zaragoza, Mayor Pro Tem McDonald, and all of the other City Council members. My name is Cynthia Gonzalez, and as most of you may know, I am the mother of Joshua Aaron Van, who was murdered on February the 17th, 2014 at 6:38 p.m. I'm also the cousin of Christopher Camper, who was also murdered in Oxnard on June the 25th, 2018. And I just wanted to come tonight and ask the City Council what they're doing about public safety. We've had 8 homicides in the city of Oxnard since the beginning of the year, 2021, and 4 of those were committed with firearms. There have been 93 people that have been murdered in the city of Oxnard since my son was killed in 2014. And 67 of those homicides were committed using firearms. This is a problem. We had a mass shooting at Borderline in 2018 on November 7th, 2018. And then if we go back even further, Oxnard had another mass shooting December 2nd, 1993. I want to know what the plan is to keep our people safe and to raise gun violence awareness. I don't know, I haven't heard anything from the city regarding these recent homicides or regarding the city regarding any of the homicides that have happened in the years past. And if you have said something, please forgive me. But I don't recall hearing anything. The leaders in San Jose who recently had the mass shooting where 9 people were murdered, they're doing something. There are changes being made. And granted, we haven't had anything happen like that in our city in a long time. I think we need to be proactive, and I think we need to make some changes, and we need to start a conversation because too many of our children are dying. Too many of us are burying our children, and too many of us are silent about that. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I'm hoping that I can connect with someone that can tell me what the plan is. Tell us all what the plan is, because we need to do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia, and staff did take the information from you. Thank you for sharing. Our next speaker is Felix Babrisky, followed by Ray Partell. Felix.
Mr. Felix Babrisky?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Now that the mask mandate has been lifted, when are we going to have in-person city council meetings? The next question I have is, there seems to be more homeless people that are trying to make home for themselves at the shores.
Thank you, Ray, and the staff is taking notes. Our next speaker is Ray Partell, followed by Aaron Starr.
Mr. Ray Plattel? Mr. Plattel, you may unmute by pressing *6.
Hello.
Hi, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. Mayor, council members, city staff, and the public. On June the 1st, the Oxnard City Council approved 6-0 to appropriate $2.5 million from the American Rescue Plan Act Fund for the Gratitude Program, which grants full-time and part-time grocery and drug essential retail workers a one-time $1,000 payout. This is great. It's a good thing to do. However, are we ignoring another important working class who were thrust into an even more dangerous environment and also put themselves and families at risk? That is, doctors, hospital workers, nurses, ER nurses, nurses assistants, etc. The essential grocery and drug retail workers, although being required to work, were only potentially exposed to the COVID-19 virus. However, on the other hand, our local doctors, hospital workers, nurses, ER nurses, nurses assistants, etc., while being required to work, were definitely exposed to the COVID via infected patients, which they were required to treat. Some of these healthcare professionals even self-isolated from family members after working hours to ensure the safety of their families. Any consideration for these people? To my knowledge, unlike the UFCW Union Local 770 grocery workers, there is no union advocating for the healthcare professionals to receive this expression of gratitude. Do we just take them for granted, or do we show them that we care and appreciate what they do and continue to do? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Aaron Starr, followed by Mania Herrera. Aaron Starr.
Aaron Starr?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. First, I want to let you know that Doug Partell is actually on the line and he wants to speak, so he hasn't been called yet, but hopefully you'll reach him. I'd like to first echo part of what Felix Bobisky just said earlier. It's time for the city council to meet in public again. Other city councils in Ventura County are meeting in person with the public given full access. City Hall is open, but for some reason the council chambers is not. And the rationale being given for not opening up the council chambers is that it needs to undergo asbestos remediation. And that's fine, but the remediation hasn't commenced yet. We can see at this very moment that the mayor and city staff are in the council chambers. So apparently it's not so dangerous and they can't be there right now. Seems to me that we should meet until the remediation begins, at least at the council chambers. And then later on, if the council chambers isn't available, we should meet someplace else like the PAC, which you've done in the past. So my second subject is the IUF lawsuit. I'd like to remind you that back at the end of December, the city manager put out a press release. This was when the tentative ruling came out against the IUF. And it's kind of a mocking press release saying, Mr. Starr claims that the city had illegally charged the city's 3 utilities and infrastructure use fee, or IUF, and later goes on to say that the city's action was not illegal, but rather the city implemented the IUF wrongly and improperly, and therefore the city must return the IUF funds to utilities. Well, just so we can clear things up, June 14th, yesterday, a ruling came out, and what the judge wrote was this: the city's systematic disregard of Proposition 218's unambiguous prohibition against using IUFs for general government services without first obtaining voter approval over the course of multiple fiscal years was illegal and unreasonable. I'm going to repeat that again: illegal and unreasonable. There's no question that folks violated the law. Now, the writ commands the city to cease imposing the IUF 30 days after the writ was served, which in this case was May 18th. So 30 days from May 18th is June 17th, 2 days from now. And people are asking me whether the city will comply with the judge's order and reduce the utility rates that were being overcharged to remove that IUF portion. So I guess that's my question for the city manager. Are we going to open up, and are we going to comply with the law? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mania Herrera.
Mr. Herrera, you may unmute by pressing *6.
Hello?
Yes, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Mayor Zaragoza, members of the City Council, my name is Mania Herrera. I am the creator of Citizens for a Better Oxnard. Today, Aaron Starr went on Citizens for a Better Oxnard to brag about another technical win for his $36.5 million lawsuit concerning the infrastructure use fee. Well, I wanted to respond. There's the truth, and then there's Aaron Starr's version of the truth. Here the court rules in favor of a technicality, and then Starr spins it to make it sound like he just saved us taxpayers millions of dollars. In basic terms, here is what the judge ruled. The way the city imposed this fee was not done correctly, and that the city would need to resubmit the breakdown of this fee if it wanted to charge it. No fines were imposed, no one went to jail. Why? Because it was all based on a technicality. So now the city needs to put the money back into the utilities account. This is like moving money from your shirt pocket into your pants pocket. How is that a win? And look at how he structured his lawsuit. He isn't suing to have the money go back to the people. He is suing just so that the city won't be able to spend the money on streets, police, and fire, because that's what these fees were being spent on. No one was getting rich on these funds. It was going towards our services. Do you want to know where we are spending tons of money? It's defending against Aaron Starr's lawsuits. Since he claims to be very good with numbers, why don't we ask him to tally up all the money his lawsuits has cost each and every one of us, then compare that to these so-called wins of his. What about his 2016 Measure M that he authored? Wasn't that illegal? He sold it to the voters as a way to reduce our water rates, but then the judge ruled recently that his measure violated state law. He not only cost us taxpayers to take that one to court, but he also tricked over half of the voters into voting for something that was illegal. He wants to say the user fee was illegal. Okay, go ahead. But he also has to admit that his measure that he wrote was also illegal. I mean, come on, what's the logic here? Pay attention, people. Why are we allowing Aaron Starr to financially cripple our city? When it comes to the people voting for some of his measures, Aaron Starr likes to say, hey, the people have spoken. We have to listen to the people. Well, by the same logic, he ran for office 5 times and was rejected 5 times.
Seconds.
So follow your own advice, Aaron Starr. Listen to the people. They don't want you representing them. They don't want you costing them millions of dollars. Why are you doing this? What's your real agenda? Where are you getting all this money from that you're using to sue the city? You know what? It's time for you to go away. Just go back to Simi or wherever you came from and just.
Thank you. Okay, that was our last. Partello, is Partello on now? Okay, Mr. Partello, 3 minutes.
Mr. Partell? Mr. Partell.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. You were not available when we originally called you, so thank you for calling in. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, staff, and public. I'd like to speak about truth and information shared with the public and its importance in the relationship between constituents, city leadership, and city staff. There was a $100 million math error in 2 different lawsuits. Oxnard understated how much needs to be spent on street paving. How does one miss the mark by $100 million? One court case is to overturn the will of the people who voted for Measure N. The city hired a consultant to write an independent report. The consultant got all the numbers from city staff, just like the NBS audit reports, but we will get to the secret admin fee audit report later. It's critically important that the numbers provided to us are accurate. If we lose trust in that reporting, the very foundation of our representative government crumbles. It is not just the laws that set up the guardrails of how our city leaders and staff go about doing business, but the bond of trust between the people who put them in their jobs to begin with and entrust them to use our hard-earned tax dollars wisely, appropriately, and provide critical services we depend on and should expect. Once we lose that trust, everything moving forward is called into question, even in cases when the figures are correct. It's a crisis of confidence. Here's just one example. The $4.4 million math error in calculating pay raises in the form of healthcare benefit premiums for 3 safety union contracts. Staff reported an increase of $5.5 million when the actual cost is about $10 million. If a bank teller is off by a few dollars, that is reconciled and they are accountable. Tens of millions of dollars incorrect and no accountability, that is just crazy. We need to know exactly who is making up those numbers. In a court case on wastewater rates, the depositions of city staff under oath, time and time again, they claim not to understand the report or document, so couldn't answer direct questions. We need a system in place that we know exactly who it is making those numbers, and if something is off, they need to be held accountable. The buck has to stop somewhere. Hiding behind the law with claims of immunity is not being answerable to the public. False claims of having to share documents because it was discussed in closed section when no litigation was ongoing and the document exemption is crazy. Look, what does it take for our city leaders to be accountable? Maybe when folks are let out of City Hall in handcuffs, then things will change. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is a city manager's report. And this is item number 1 in this COVID-19 update from the Director of Emergency Services. And the recommendation is the City Council receive and file an update from the Director of Emergency on COVID-19. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the first of 3 reports tonight under this section of the agenda. I'm waiting for the PowerPoint to be raised. Here it is. It's coming on. All right. So with regard to COVID updates, I think, to use an old saying, unless you've been under a rock or otherwise not able to pay attention to society, California, the economy is open today, as of today, wide open. Basically, according to the governor's announcements, everything is open with almost no capacity limits or distancing required. There are a few continued restrictions in terms of mask wearing. So according to the state, if you are vaccinated, masks are not required in most places. There are a handful of places where they're required, like large gatherings or traveling on an airplane. And I believe in schools I think it's K through 12. If you're not vaccinated, you are supposed to continue to wear a mask. How that is determined is, I believe, based on the individual honor system. So, having said that, though, the CDC guidelines, as well as the Cal OSHA guidelines, remain a little bit different and in question. So I'll talk about that a little more when I address the council chambers. And then, of course, the prior system we'd been working under with the various color tiers for the county, as well as the state's reopening blueprint, those are now essentially moot or expired. So as of today, the state is open economically, the economy. Now, having said that, it does not mean, and no one has stated, that the pandemic itself has come to a reasonable end. We are still in a pandemic, although it has gotten much better. And again, this is odd to me, but there are remaining interesting incentives for people who have yet to be vaccinated to get a vaccine so that the pandemic can actually be fully arrested. So here are some current examples. You could win a vacation, a California dream vacation to San Francisco, San Diego, Los Angeles, Palm Springs, or Anaheim. In addition to getting your free donuts and some other free gimmies from various corporate entities. I can't keep track of it all, but essentially it's clear that the state is still very, very eager to get more people vaccinated to the point where we've got these various lotteries, and the cash lotteries are also still in play. In terms of here in Oxnard, we continue to have some of the vaccination clinics. You can see the addresses. They have various hours. All this information is available both at the city's website and the county's website. I think people are used to looking at those now in terms of learning when the vaccination sites, the clinics are open, and particularly which of the vaccines they are offering and when. So there's a reminder of that. Next, just an announcement, because some people have been asking. Yes, the Cowboys are coming back. They have their press conference beginning on July 21. Then the practice will begin on July 22nd. And the training camp is scheduled to conclude on August 12th. We don't have all the details yet as to how the fan engagement will be this year. Both the team and the NFL and the city staff are working out those details. The team will announce them as soon as they are determined. I get the sense that there's going to be a hard line in terms of fan actual interaction with the players. My guess is that's not going to be allowed. I think there's going to be a hard line between where fans can be to observe training camp versus prior to the pandemic, where people there were opportunities to interact with the players. So don't be surprised if you're not able to actually interact with your favorite players at this training camp this year, but we are excited that they are returning. Next, it's a reminder, and we can talk about this more, that fireworks are illegal here in the city of Oxnard. Whether it's possession, sales, or offer of sales, you're subject to fines as well as arrests, fines up to $1,000 per incident. Now, this is something that happens every year. We work on it as best we can. We're applying more and more resources each year. But the bottom line is, while fireworks are illegal here, unfortunately, they are legal in communities around us, and especially in states around us. So it's a very challenging situation. We're going to actually have an item at the next council meeting to discuss this a little bit more. And then finally, I want to address the question about the council chambers. So the California did reopen the economy today, but it does not mean that the pandemic is over. Now, we do have construction scheduled here for July and August primarily to upgrade the audio visual infrastructure. And part of that requires taking apart some of the structure here, and that then triggers asbestos abatement work. So for the purposes of the next 2 weeks, I made a decision not to reopen right now for safety reasons. Again, the economy's open, but the pandemic is not over. I understand that there's light at the end of the tunnel, but make no mistake, we're still in the tunnel, and I'm not willing to risk any more than necessary any of our staff or our electeds getting infected, right? The truth of the matter is not everyone has been vaccinated, and there's no real way to determine who has been and who hasn't been. Throughout this pandemic, we have been, knock on wood, as a city organization, on balance, we've done a very good job of keeping our employees safe, all of us. It's my responsibility to do the best we can to keep our employees as safe as possible while they're at work. Over this past year, we've had a 17% infection rate in terms of our staff. And until this pandemic is determined to be fully arrested, much like the regular flu, we're going to do our best to continue protecting ourselves. So that means that for all of our spaces that are open, we're still going to ask the public, and we'll provide them with a mask when they interact with city staff, and city staff who interact with the public will also continue wearing a mask. Now, irrespective of the governor's opening of the economy, OSHA, the entity that regulates what the workplace safety requirements are, they're actually meeting this Thursday, 2 days from now, to update what their guidelines are for COVID mitigations in the workplace. So things may change drastically on Thursday if we get an announcement from OSHA. I don't know yet. But again, until I can be more assured that the community at large is safer, I'm not willing to take any unnecessary risk. And I really have to say, I don't understand when in American society it was so easy to forget that 600,000 people have perished from this pandemic. So we're still in it. So for the next 2 weeks, we'll continue having these meetings as they are. When we commence the construction here, we will have to go to completely remote. We'll announce that information as we get a little bit closer, and we expect the work to be completed, hopefully by the end of August, and be back in here in September. And as most cities are contemplating, There will be a hybrid model going forward. I don't think, and most of my colleagues in the county and across the state, nobody believes that there's any going backwards with regard to having public speakers Zoom in. So we expect there should be a hybrid model that can make it more convenient for some people, in addition to eventually attending in person. So more information on that to come. Thank you. So that concludes item number 1 with the COVID updates.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Item number 2, City Manager says, subject is Manley Beach District MAD4. Recommendation the City Council receive and file an oral report from the City Manager regarding the proposed modification to the territory, including within Manley Beach Maintenance District. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, so at last week's round of council committee meetings, I had 2 requests. This one from Councilmember Perello and the next one from Councilmember Turan to look into, in this case, it's LMD MAD4, which is the Mandalay Bay Maintenance District 4. And then next will be the CFD 5, which is River Park. So this particular LMD has many challenges, and it's actually one of the legacy districts where the annual assessment is capped, and it's capped at $46.70 per property. The assessment, which also includes the hotel that's down there, annually it brings in approximately $40,000 a year, and this has been the case for a very long time. And that's just clearly not enough funding to do much of anything down there, especially given the array of needs or having to do with landscaping, maintenance, as well as sand management and dune management. So there are many issues there that need to be corrected. So I know that staff has met with the neighbors in recent time. I don't know exactly how far it goes back, but there's still unmet needs. So I intend, again, at the request of the council member for the district, to personally meet with the community as well. And we'll do that this summer. Now, there's an issue that is much more urgent in my mind, which has to do with the windblown sand, which is blocking access, particularly from a parking lot out there. And it is actually creating an ADA hurdle for passage. So what I'm going to do with that district is, again, because it's the legacy district that is maxed out, there's no way to increase, whether the community and the hotel want to or not, there's no way to increase their assessments, which means all the added work that's evolved over the years that is needed or wanted can't be met. So what I'm going to do is pull out the parking lot from the responsibility of that district so that the city will take over responsibility so that we then can maintain it and clear the sand regularly so that it's not creating that ADA blockage for access to the beach and that walkway. So again, this summer, I'll meet with the neighbors and the hotel to work out the rest of these issues because and some of these issues and challenges pertain to Coastal Commission regulations that have also evolved over the years. So again, what I'm going to do there is withdraw the parking lot from that district's responsibility, and the city will take that over and be able to maintain it routinely. So that's the oral report update for item 2, Mr. Mayor. And if
Okay,
that's
Mr. Mayor.
okay, I'm going to move on to number 3.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. We have 3 speakers on that item. but
Oh, yes.
Let me introduce that first. This is a subject committee facility district FD number 5, River Park. The recommendation of the City Council receive and file an oral report from the City Manager regarding the proposed modification for the total annual levy for CFD number 5. And I have 3 speakers. Let me go ahead and bring the speakers first, Mr. City Manager. And then we have Ty Hartley, Kai Schulander, and Armando Delgado in that order. Ty, Kai, and Armando. This is an E3.
Ty Hartley.
Hello, I'm Ty Hartley, River Park resident. I'm disappointed that at the June 1st City Council meeting, all council members made a unanimous decision to approve an almost 15% increase in River Park's Mellaroo tax, CFD5. This means that most residents will see a $300 to $400 or more increase on their tax bill. For an increase of this large, it should be justified and should have had more engagement with residents, allowing them to weigh in on the decision since we are the ones paying for selective services. That said, at this time, I do not feel much will be accomplished during tonight's session. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Kai Schelender, followed by Armando Delgado. Kai. Or
Kyle Schlender. Kyle Schlender.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Kyle. Good evening, Mayor Zaragoza, council members, staff, and fellow residents. My name is Kyle Schlender. I'm a professional union carpenter and a proud member of Local 805. Tonight, I'm speaking for myself and my brotherhood, but however, I'd like to mention that I credit my organization for offering me the opportunity to address you all tonight. I want to start by saying that I live in River Park community along with my wife and my dogs for the past 2 years. My fellow neighbors and other local River Park residents have shared their experiences to promote the quality of life we have here. We know exactly what was required of us in order to live in a solely needed community with higher end amenities. As a carpenter apprentice, I know it was a little more expensive to live here than some of the other parts of Oxnard. So, so I understand you got to pay to play. This is what I understand about Mellaroo. It could be best thought of as a 3-part process. Part 1 involves defining a package of proposed government powers. Part 2 involves conferring those powers upon a legal legislative body. Part 3 involves exercising the powers by financing new facilities and or services. The city may have not been very transparent about our CFD within the past few years, but I also understand that this council and city managers didn't adopt it. So let's quit pointing fingers and let's start working together. This year's information about proposed increases may have not been delivered very well, and if it was, then my bad. It was somewhat confusing, but I gotta say thanks to Councilman Taryn for staying true to his role and doing his job. I appreciate him responding to public comments and finding a better solution for us registered tax-paying voters. It means a lot. So to our elected officials, know that we trust you, but we'll also hold you accountable. And Mr. City Manager, I'm willing to pay the price to live in a nice community, but please don't make me broke doing it. Thank you all and have a good night.
Thank you. Armando Delgado.
Mr. Delgado.
Yes, I am here.
Hi, there seems to be an echo. If you could lower your TV in the background, please.
Not have a TV.
Oh, okay. Well, you have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Zaragoza, council members, staff, and fellow residents. My name is Armando Delgado. I know many of you may recognize who I am, and because I do attend a lot of our city meetings regularly. I'm a representative and proud member of Carpenters Local 805. But tonight, however, I'm speaking for myself and not my brotherhood. Actually, for the record, my fellow union brothers, Fernando Lopez, Antonio Garcia, and Brian Davis wanted to be included on this tonight, but couldn't attend. But I can also talk on their behalf. And they too are River Park residents who agree with my next few comments. And the points are similar. I want to start by saying that I live in the River Park community, along with my wife, children, and a dog. My children attend the school here within our neighborhood also, part of the Rio School District. Matter of fact, we shop here, we recreate here, and sometimes we work here. I mean, I remember living at the apartments in front of Target before Target was built. I walked across the street through a security fence, stopped about 300 feet, and began to build concrete formwork. I helped build the collection. and I hope that one day I would be able to live near it. However, the economy turned down, the construction stopped, and boom, Dust Bowl. Years later, it kicked back up, and the union money was flowing again. I know it was a little more expensive to live here than some other parts of Oxnard, and so what? Councilmember Madrigal, I remember you said one time, carpenters should be able to build the Fisherman's Wharf because we couldn't also afford to live there. Well, guess what? Many of our carpenters built the homes throughout River Park. We know exactly what was required of us in order to live in this new community with nice new parks, roundabouts, schools, and parks. Nice things cost money. We understand that. For the past few years, I've engaged with many of my fellow neighbors and other local River Park residents to share our neighborhood experience. We promote the quality of life here. We promote living here, shopping here, working here. It's not bragging or snobbish way. It's more of a promotion of how new developments can really impact the entire city and not just a community. I did reach out to Councilmember Turan with a couple of complaints, a couple of confusion on reports and understanding what was going on, because I'm the taxpayer here. But I also understand that, paying taxes to have nice things in a city like this is good for the entire community. I don't care if people from other parts of
30
Oxnard
seconds.
come to use the park in my neighborhood. I don't care if they come use the dog park, the walking areas, the things that we pay for. Now, a tax hike, okay, what are we getting out of it? It's not just money to collect money. It's, are we going to lose services? Or are we going to gain services? Are we going to gain a better community? Are people going to be happier? Especially now with COVID being close to over, I think we can share our community with everyone else. Thank you.
Your time is up.
Thank you, Armando. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for those public comments. So on this item, this was the one where Councilmember Turan asked me to personally look into this, and it's because it's a timely issue, just like the prior item. It's timely because we're now taking action. This one, the council took action on June 1st, but there is still time because we're not sending this to the county assessor until I believe the first week in July. So I did look into this. And so let me explain a couple things, and then I want to share what my recommendation is going to be. I am recommending a significant change, which means we will have to actually bring it back at the next council meeting for council action. So let me start off by saying that there's clearly either a misunderstanding or even a non-understanding about the difference between what the max tax allowed is in this CFD versus the actual annual levy. So we will make sure to have that explained in detail when we bring this back to the council meeting next time for council action. So this CFD formation, which dates back to 2005 for River Park, under this CFD, it can properly charge for a range of services for the River Park development. These include maintenance of the parks there, the various open space facilities there, the recreation services there, the flood and storm protection there, the enhanced police and fire protection services there. The existing CFD also includes charges for these and other related services as part of the assessment that's paid each year. Now, in addition, when River Park was originally developed, the cost of the construction of specific public facilities, which include the fire station and the 2 new schools out there, was also included via a bond, right? It was financed. So everyone who subsequently purchased a home in River Park through the CFD pays for all of these services, right? They help pay for the bonds for those assets, those physical assets, the schools and the fire station, as well as all the other services for landscape maintenance and so on that I listed above. Now, there's a little bit with regards to the bonds for the schools and the fire station. There's a little bit of good news on the horizon there, which is those bonds. It's been 15 years, and I believe those are 30-year bonds. Although I will confirm, but in 15 years they will expire, and that will decrease the annual assessments. Now, in looking at the formation documents, I see, again, going back to the 2005 document, I see all the things listed, and what caught my eye, right? What caught my eye was that the development was able to, for whatever reasons, not only bond for the fire station, but the CFD also requires the payment for fire services. And that is a line item of 1.6 million a year. Now, in looking at this, I think at this time, and this is what I'm recommending to the city council, that we should pull that particular line item out. And again, it's because they already pay for the fire station. The city is no longer in financial straits. I don't know, going back to when this was being negotiated, which probably goes back obviously prior to 2005. Obviously, I wasn't here. I don't know what the various factors were that went into this formation of the CFD. But I think it's appropriate now that we take the line item for fire services out and just reabsorb it into the general fund. And doing so represents a reduction of about over 30% of what the assessments were that we recently approved at the beginning of the month. And again, we're going to explain that when we bring this back to the council in 2 weeks for action, the distinction between the max assessment and the actual assessment. Also, I think one of the things that staff was trying to do to be more efficient with our response time was we added the on-call contracts for services, and I think we're comfortable. I've asked staff to review it into cutting that in half, which was originally it was an $800,000 increase. We think we can go through this year with 400,000. So we're going to recommend that reduction as well. And again, that's just money that's there in the event that we need a bunch of various services for ongoing maintenance. So in all, this recommendation, as you will see at the next council meeting, should result in roughly a 40% reduction in the assessments. So again, I will be bringing this amendment to the CFD 5 to the council at the June 29th meeting. So that's the oral update.
Councilman Perello, you have a question?
Yes, I'm grateful that another council member asked for questions on something that impacted his district, as I did on my district. And I'm also grateful the city manager is answering this. But for the public speakers, I believe one of them is didn't identify. She's the chair of the River Park neighborhood, I believe. I sat in the Rio School District board meetings before River Park started construction. When the CFD was done, there was a big push to get the developers to there was a big amount of pressure placed on the school district trustees to approve this creation. And some of the things that happened, there were a history of Oxnard, it's not good at that time frame. And looking at this, I give credit to the management of this city for looking at it and doing something. I'd recommend that if other council members have something that they think is wrong in their district, they bring it forward. Because this obviously sounds like there's a mistake and it should have been caught a long time ago. But there was a mistake when it was set up. I do recall one particular school board member, Miss Eva Costa. She went to the wall to try to protect the people that, in her words, they're going to be paying all this and they haven't even got a chance to vote. And she was overridden. There was a recall in the district. There was a lot of things that happened in the city of Oxnard. There was firing of individuals for the city of Oxnard, and it was a dark time in Oxnard. I'm grateful that this is coming to a head, and I expect a clear explanation for everybody so that when accusations are made about comments about this or that, there does come time when there's a line drawn in the sand, and from this time forward, the truth. Because there's a little ditty about the truth and a lie. And they matter. Facts matter. Actions and facts matter. And I'm grateful that Councilman Teran brought this up. I'm grateful that Mr. Nguyen, our city manager, addressed it. And I'm also grateful that he addressed the issue that people have brought up in the area. The first item, I didn't get my hand up in time. We went quickly into this one. But one of the things that I hope some people have listened, when the fees cannot be raised over a period of time, and they're as insignificant as it is, you cannot keep buying the same amount. Look at what a gallon of gas costs then. Look what a loaf of bread costs then. Look at what a pair of shoes costs then. And you expect to get the same for the less value of your money. Thank you very much, Mayor, for letting me speak.
Thank you. And this item is going to be brought back in a couple of weeks so we can discuss it further. Now we're going to go into city council comments. And of course, the legislative body may make some brief announcements, a brief report, and also they can also ask for any consideration of any future items. And would like to please keep it to 3 minutes. And the first speaker that would like to speak on this item is Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councilmember Teran had his hand up for the last item, so I'm going to defer to him and then I'll speak.
Okay, Councilman Teran.
Oh, I appreciate that, Mayor Pro Tem. I can go ahead and just roll that into my comments. I'll go ahead and let you go into this next item here if you'd like. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Mayor, I want to take a moment and give recognition to an organization here in Ventura County, which is a chapter of the National Latino Peace Officers Association in Ventura County, also called NLPOA. And NLPOA is a nationwide organization, and it is not strictly limited to Latinos or peace officers. This membership is open to all people that share common goals and likes in support of that organization. And the reason I'm bringing this up is the national organization just recognized a local member here, Mike Aranda, who's retired from the sheriff's department, makes his home here in Oxnard, and has lived here his whole life, I believe. And he was given, recognized for the Alan Alvarez Legacy Lifelong Membership Award. And that's pretty prestigious for that organization to do that. They cited Mr. Aranda's participation in the community and the organization and the values of the organization. And I think a lot of people don't know, they don't hear much about this organization, but it has been active in Ventura County for 20 years. And they do a scholarship award every year for seniors in high school and college students to help further their education. And last year, the Ventura County chapter was able to issue $17,000 in scholarships to deserving students. I think that's a pretty noteworthy accomplishment. So I wanted to make sure that we recognize Mike Aranda for his service to the community and to that organization, and that we recognize the organization for their community support to the education of our young people. So thank you for allowing me the moment to talk, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd like to add a little bit to that. I've had the pleasure of working with Mike Aranda for many, many years, and with the Latino Peace Officers Association, and they've given a tremendous amount of money in scholarships to the community, and he's well-deserved. He's really, really worked diligently for years and years on this item. So thank you for commending and recognizing Michael Aranda. Our next speaker, again, Councilmember Teran, you're next, and then Perello.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to start first by looking at the just previous thing we had. I was looking at the agenda and it says we won't get into detailed discussion. So I'll just mention this in my council comments. I want to thank all of the many residents of River Park who reached out to me after the June 1st council meeting. I truly believe that that is democracy in action. And an item came forward. It was something that directly affected them as a community and as individual families. we had some really great discussion about it. And I'm very thankful to the city manager for being responsive to that when I brought it to his attention. And now we have this coming before us in a few weeks, and we'll see the recommendations, and we'll see how the council decides to move forward with it. But I wanted to take the opportunity to thank all the River Park residents who did reach out. I really saw this as a great experience to see this in action and how people's voices can be heard in making change within their community. I wanted to give some updates very quickly. I want to thank all of the residents and city staff who came out this previous Monday for the first ever Pride flag raising over the city of Oxnard, over City Hall. And my council colleagues were there as well. And we had school board members from the Oxnard School District. We had a school board trustee from the County Board of Education, and the county, or the superintendent was there from Oxnard School District, and representatives from Diversity Collective and Oxnard LGBTQ community. Thank you all so much for coming out, and members of the public who came out in support of the raising of the flag over City Hall. And I want to thank the County of Ventura and Board of Supervisors, especially Supervisor Ramirez, for raising the Pride flag over the County Government Center again for the first time in our county's history just this past Friday. It was a really great event, and it was great to see members of the public come out in support of our LGBTQ community and just really showing solidarity with those among us in our community who absolutely are deserving of that equitable support, just as others get. I wanted to thank also the Fremont North Neighborhood Council Executive Board for allowing me to come to their meeting they just had this past weekend. They are planning for a special meeting that will be covering the construction that's occurring in their neighborhood now for street repaving, which has been a long time coming. So thank you to all of them for that. If you live in that neighborhood, please stay tuned for the announcement of that date of that special meeting, which I believe will occur by the end of this month of June. And then the River Park Neighborhood Council will be meeting this Thursday, June 17th at 7 p.m. You can access that through the weekly packet that comes from the city. And lastly, to close everything out, I want to wish a happy birthday to my daughter, Maybe, who just turned 9 this past Saturday. And it's so odd sometimes to have a 9-year-old. When she was born 8 weeks early and was 4 pounds and 6 ounces. And now it looks like she's going to be taller than both my wife and I in just a couple of years, it seems like. But I wanted to just take a moment to acknowledge that. And happy birthday to you. And thank you, Mayor, for the time.
Thank you, Councilmember Perella, followed by Councilperson Lopez. Perella.
Thank you. I would also like to congratulate Mr. Michael Ronda, a tremendous compliment, a tremendous award, but I'd like to address that a little bit later. I would like to, I'm just asking a question on this. With the less than pleasant events that took place last night in the Oxnard Beach Park, does any member of the city of Oxnard police or fire monitor social media? There was an event where a police officer was hurt. There were some serious issues and a tremendous amount of people upset. And a lot of it came through social media. I have all the utmost respect for the police officers. I really do wonder, the youth that were involved in this event, the numbers that were there, if their parents and grandparents have any clue of what they were doing and how far out of hand it got. But this issue of having somebody monitor social media is to get a heads up before somebody calls 911 or something like that, to have an idea that something like that is going on and it can get out of control like it did. My congratulations to the police department for everything they did. And I hope that the injured police officer recovers quickly and is back on duty. With respect to some of the public comments that were made tonight, I am interested in this Scarlet Bell, the issue, if the city can find out what's going on. I did have an opportunity last week to go on a tour of the Mandalay Bay seawalls, and there was a comment made about some public walkways that may not be as public as they should be. and commercial vessels being in an area where it's basically private boats. I'd like to get a clarification on that. I was available to attend and fortunate to attend the flag raising here at City Hall. I also attended the flag raising with Councilman Madrigal, Vianney Lopez, and Turan at the City Hall. But I also went to the county flag raising, and Miss Lopez was also there. The opportunity to thank the district attorney. Some meetings ago, the district attorney made a presentation here, and I asked him a very pointed question. And I was very fortunate and very humbled. He took the meeting, addressed the issue, and responded to some of the concerns. And I was very impressed. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a different day with this district attorney and his staff. He met with the individual and one of the individuals involved, several district attorneys, answered every question, very frank, upfront meeting. Mr. Netanyahu is a credit to his profession. The issue of the River Park, the fees, I know that the documents are available because they go through the Planning Commission. I mean, I think we have access to the documents. And the last thing with respect to the award for the Latino peace officers, just as last night, when someone calls 911, I don't believe they're looking for a specific group of peace officers, just as I don't believe a person is looking for a very specific medical person or a very specific legal person or a very specific plumber. We're all in this together. And sometimes when we break ourselves down into specific groups, we diminish the power of being a member. And I know that I'm going to get emails on this one, but there comes a time I'm an Oxnardian. I'm not a pink, black, blue, pink, white, or Oxnardian. I'm not a man, woman, gay Oxnardian. I'm an Oxnardian, and I'm a member on the Oxnard City Council. And I need to express that view. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank
And
you.
again, thank you for bringing those issues up with respect to the two questions council members had, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. And Councilmember Lopez, followed by Councilman Madrigal.
Thank you, Mayor. And I see Chief Benitez turn on his camera, so I think he had some comments, so I'll wait after him.
Okay, Chief.
Certainly, I can comment to Councilmember Perello's question about social media. We do have staff that actually actively monitor social media. We look for things like this. We were kind of in the information business. So when we have information that events like gatherings that happened at the park are planned, we can actually plan a response. But there's times where we don't get the information. And last night was one of those. We didn't have any advance notice that was happening until we got the call. But long story short is that we do manage that. And we also do have a lot of residents forward us information that they find off of social media, whether it's Nextdoor or Facebook, and we assess that for its value as well.
Thank you, Chief. Councilwoman Lopez, any additional comments?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief. I did want to add and joined in my colleagues' participation last week. It was really great to see diverse representation in our community, both at both pride flag raising ceremonies in our city and at the county government center. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to join a virtual recognition event for the students at Lemonwood Elementary School. And that celebrated students who were placed on the honor roll, as well as students who have completed a biliteracy program. So I wanted to take a moment to recognize all our students throughout our city who are finishing up the school year. It certainly has been a very challenging and tough school year, especially all those high school students that are graduating this year, and our students who have completed higher education 4-year degrees at our universities, which is happening right now. So congratulations to everyone here in Oxnard, not only the students, but all their parents and families who are part of that process in the academic system. Last week, I joined the Airport Authority meeting. We had a presentation done by some residents in the Channel Islands harbor neighborhood regarding noise complaints and the flight path of some of the planes that are flying out of the Oxnard Airport, which was a really informative presentation. I think anyone can find it online on the Ventura County website under the Airport Authority website. And I wanted to mention that if there are concerns of any residents in terms of noise complaints or low flight paths, those can be submitted to the Airport Authority, and there is a number that can be that you can call, and that number is 805-388. 805-382-3022, and this is specifically for the Oxnard Airport. And lastly, as we have our chief on the line, I was going to ask for some information regarding the activity around fireworks in our city, which I think just about every corner of our city has had some concern about the fireworks activity happening very, very late into the night, early morning. And so I am conscious of that there are concerns around, and following what happened, what we saw last year, I do want to acknowledge that our police department is working to address that. They do appreciate the city manager's brief update that we will be hearing more about it, but I do want to pass it on to Chief Benitez if there's any additional information that you can share with us at this time.
Certainly. Thank you for posing that my way. Fireworks is actually like a starting point with this. It's a very widespread problem that goes well beyond Oxnard. This is happening literally across every city in the state, including the ones where the fireworks actually are legal, because there are essentially, I would say, three different groups: people that love fireworks, people that hate fireworks, and there are your government workers like your police and fire that are caught in between this. It's a very divisive issue. It is a very emotional issue for many people, and that is because people's peace is directly impacted by fireworks. In other words, they're kept up late, their pets become upset, they become upset, and so we start that it's a very emotional issue. But the larger problem here is that fireworks are easily obtainable and very easy to get hold of. And last year was a good evidence of that, because we had approximately 3,600 calls to Oxnard PD between May 28th and July 4th of last year. And of that number, over half of them happened on the 4th of July. So law enforcement and public safety agencies get overwhelmed when that happens. So we do the best we can with what we have. We work with the information that we have, and we have to keep plugging away at this problem, but it is a large one.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor. I'm done.
Council member, I know, Mr. City Manager, you want to share something? I know that Eric Sanstagard sent a real nice letter to an individual that was concerned about fireworks too, and my understanding that they're going to double the officers of this 4th of July to try and handle some of the fireworks. Mr. City Manager, you want to add a little bit more to that?
No, because it's not agendized, but we'll have, again, at the next council meeting, more detail.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Chief.
Okay. Our next speaker is Master Gal, Oscar, council member.
You're muted, Oscar.
Is it muted? Oscar,
yeah, that would help. Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm sorry, like I started saying without anyone hearing me, but over the last 2 weeks, I've been busy meeting with public concerning a variety of issues in and out of the district. Just quick little updates on District 3. The new high school is about to begin building, Del Sol High School. Fence was installed around the property right on Rose Avenue from Camino del Sol all the way to Cesar Chavez. Construction has also begun on the streets in La Colonia. They have all their material on Elisa Court, and that's actually as well. That's actually fenced off as well. This Saturday is the Juneteenth virtual celebration. And also this Saturday is the ribbon cutting event for the new Clinica Center on Gonzales Road and Lantana, which is actually named after a longtime city employee, Karen Burnham. And then lastly, as was previously stated, congratulations to all the graduates. Now, we're in June, so, extra focus on high school, middle school, 5th grade promotions, and my favorite, the kindergarten promotions. I want to give a special shout out to my niece. She's going to begin high school this upcoming fall. And then, there's people in the public who question, why this is being brought up at a city council meeting as opposed to, a school board meeting. And simple answer is the importance of education, not only for the present, but for our future. Some of us don't have, that strong support system or that strong networking system in front of us. Me being a first generation graduate, I know the difficulty of, getting through just even easy elementary, middle school. My mom has an 8th grade education. My dad has a 2nd grade education. So, this means a lot to the families. I see parents being very proud of their children, even for the smallest. It might not seem like a lot, but a promotional ceremony to go into high school, it's a big thing. It's something that, they were not able to get. So special shout outs to all the graduates, especially those who are first generation graduates. So thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. I'd like to share a couple of comments here before we continue. I really had an honor of presenting some accommodations this weekend. On Saturday, I had the honor to give accommodation to Dottie Massa for 38 years of teaching and servicing as a principal at Santa Clara Elementary School. She was a very civic-minded individual, and of course, we're going to miss her tremendously. She's going to be moving to Tennessee. One of the things I'd like to share with you is that she was also the teacher for my son, Johnny, that he was a 1st grade teacher. And we shared quite a bit of information with her, and we are going to miss her tremendously. And then on the same Saturday, I had the honor to present a accommodation to Margaret Daniels for her 100-year birthday at Heritage Square. She was very instrumental in her efforts in helping fundraise for the following schools: the Santa Clara High School, Our Lady of Guadalupe in Colonia, and also that was in the Colonia. She also fundraised for Cristo Rey Catholic School in the Colonia, also the St. Anthony's Elementary School, as well as she served in the Ventura County Draft Board and other agencies. She was also a businesswoman since 1952, where she prepared numerous income taxes, real estate transactions, and notary work for the public there in Colonia. She was really instrumental in doing a lot of good work for the community. Then on Sunday, I had the pleasure of attending the farm worker food distribution at the Masonic Temple parking lot. And it was joined by numerous nonprofit organizations and also by City Court. I thank Darrell Harrison for really helping out those individuals. They served over 700 families there with food and a lot of assistance. So I want to thank them for the good work that they did. Also, I want to share with you that I also had the opportunity to be in the flag raising ceremony of the other day too. And I want to thank our staff too, our city manager, our police chief, and many other city employees that were there helping us out with the flag raising ceremonies. And finally, I want to wish all the happy Father's Day that's coming up to all the fathers this coming Sunday. Thank you for that. Okay, now that takes us to item G, the review of the consent agenda items. And of course, at this time, we don't have any public comments on those items, but we have items 1 to 5. And if we have any concerns or any questions on those consent items, please raise your hand. And if not, we will entertain a motion to
Mayor, I'll move information consent.
So moved by Mayor Pro Tem
Second.
and second by Councilman Basua. Roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Aye.
Councilmember Perrello,
Yes.
Councilmember Basua,
Aye.
Councilmember Madrigal,
Aye.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Aye.
Councilmember Turan,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
and we also have an item for the Housing Authority. So I will call on Commissioner Andrade to unmute.
Yes,
Thank you, Commissioner Andrade.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our next item is a public hearing. This public hearing is in this time and place when it said a public hearing on item J1 in the Housing Department. The subject is 2021 Annual Action Plan Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnership, and the Health Emergency Solution Grant funding recommendations. The recommendation is that City Council, number one, conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding the plan for the 2021 Annual Action Plan draft document with funding recommendations for the second year of the 2024 Ventura County Regional Consolidation Plan. Number two is approve the 2021 Annual Action Plan with final recommendations, use of funds for selected activities to conform with the City of Oxnard Consolidated Plan goals as defined in the Ventura County Regional Consolidated Plan for three entities, grants: Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership Grant, and also the Emergency Solution Grant to be submitted to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development as prescribed. Three, authorize the city manager to incorporate any recommended changes to the annual action plan as directed by the city council, including amending budget appropriations approved by the city council. Four, authorize the city manager to execute the required application certifications and other pertinent documents for submission to the annual action plan to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, Office of Community Planning and Development. And five, authorize the city manager to execute HUD agreements, and to sign all agreements for the implementation of the annual action plan, including sub-recipients, interdepartmental, and intra-departmental agreements. And we started with the city clerk's certification of publication and written communications, if any. Madam Clerk? Madam Clerk? Mayor, was there any legal notices for this public hearing published in Vida newspaper, May the 13, in the city clerk's office that received one written communication on this item is submitted by the city council? Is that correct?
Mayor, there was a legal notice for this public hearing published in Vida newspaper on May 13th, 2021, and the city clerk's office received one written communication on this item, which was submitted to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The Housing Director, Mr. Ramirez, in accordance with Measure M, posted a video presentation regarding this item and is available to answer any brief clarifying questions. Council members, we may have to take public testimony at this item, and the council will deliberate after the public hearing has been closed. Do we have any questions or clarifications from Mr. Ramirez? If not, thank you. I'll now open the public hearing portion of the public hearing. Members of the public were invited to sign up to speak on this item on the city website. Anyone who has signed up before the deadline has 3 minutes to speak on this item. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers on this item?
Mayor, Councilmember Turan did have his hand up for a comment prior to this.
Okay, Councilman Turan, before we go to the speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I I just have a question, and I'm guessing, seeing who the public speaker is, it is the same member of the public who had sent in a written comment as well. And I just wanted to pose the question to Mr. Ramirez that was posed in the written comment regarding our code compliance being written into the CDBG grant. It seems that that's been asked a couple of times. I'm just wondering if we can get some clarification on that as it was written in the comment.
Sure, thank you, Councilman Emilio Ramirez, Housing Director. First of all, I did speak to Mrs. Macri-Ortiz regarding her comments. First, I'd like to mention that the use of funds for code enforcement is an eligible use of funds per the regulations that are promulgated by HUD in the CDBG funds. They need to be used in a way that is beneficial to the low-income community, which the Code Enforcement Division does use. She's asking, Ms. Ortiz is asking for reports and documentation. I don't have them for her right now, but I did pledge when we spoke that I would deliver to her after the hearing today. But I can assure you that it is an eligible use of funds, despite a disagreement as to whether or not it should or should not be used, but it is eligible.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we have a speaker. We have Barbara Macri-Ortiz for 3 minutes.
Mayor, Ms. Barbara Macri-Ortiz is not available at this time.
Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. And do council members have any other comments at this time? If not, we entertain a motion. Okay, we have Council Member Bert Perello and followed by Oscar Madrigal.
I appreciated Mr. Ramirez's presentation, a pretty detailed presentation. Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Thank you. Wish we could show it.
Thank you, Councilmember Madrigal.
Thank you. On slide 5 and slide 6 of the actual presentation, there is $60,000 reduction altogether from 2 programs in La Colonia. Is this due to the fact that they weren't used this year because of COVID, or is it just a permanent cut?
Mr. Ramirez? Mm-hmm.
It is not a permanent cut. It's due to the fact that the funds were not utilized during the closed period of COVID, and the funds remain committed to the same purpose in this subsequent year, coming up year, for the same use that would have been used had they been open during COVID.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll keep this in mind for next June. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we had a motion first by was it Mayor Pro Tem? Not yet, I'm sorry, okay.
I will motion to approve the recommended action, Mayor.
Okay, and
Second.
we need a second by Lopez. Okay, roll call.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Councilmember Perello,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Madrigal,
Yes.
Councilmember Basua,
Aye.
Councilmember Turan.
Yes.
Thank you. And I also have an announcement and a clarification. The Housing Authority Commissioner Andrade will be voting on our next item, which is the public hearing J2. And we do not have a Housing Authority item for the consent items. Thank you.
Okay. Our next item is
Mayor, I also would like to announce that the motion for the public hearing, J1, we had a first by Councilmember Basua, a second by Councilmember Lopez, and the vote is that the motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Mhm. Okay, our next item is J2. This time and place to set a public hearing on this item, J2. The subject of public hearing of fiscal year 2021, the operating budget, the recommendation of the City Council and Housing Authority Board conduct a public hearing on the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget of the City of Oxnard and the Oxnard Housing Authority, and provide staff direction regarding any adjustments to the proposed budget in the preparation for the budget adoption on June 29, 2020. We start with the city clerk's certification of publication and written communications, if any. Madam Clerk.
Mayor, there was a legal notice for this public hearing published in Vida newspaper on June 3rd, 2021, and the city clerk's office received written communication on this item, which has been forwarded to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The city manager, Mr. Nguyen, in accordance with Measure M, posted a video presentation regarding this item and is available to answer any questions or any brief clarifying questions to the council and board members may have before we take public testimony on this item. The council and board will deliberate after the public hearing has been closed. Okay, so if the city manager, there's any clarification questions for the city council? There's none. Okay, following the city council. Okay, now we're going to open the public hearing. And I'm going to open the public hearing at this time. Members of the public were invited to sign up to speak on this item on the city website. Anyone signed up before the deadline has 3 minutes to speak on this item. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers at this time?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Madam Clerk,
I'm calling on Douglas Partell. One moment, please.
we have 5 speakers on this item. Mhm.
Mr. Partell?
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Partell, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Zaragoza, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, staff, and public. I just had a few questions here on what was given on the presentation by our CFO. I noticed that on the line item for parks and open spaces, now this is a comparison from this current year to the coming year from 1920 to 21-22, that shows actually a reduction of 700,000. So I was curious, the city manager had put forward some recommendations on the upcoming budget and made a presentation that it would be increased by 5.6 million. So I don't know if there was something I'm not understanding or clarification needs to be made on that. I also noted on the line item from the CFO's presentation on traffic and road improvements that showed the same figure of 2.2 million. So that was a no change. Now I know that the city council had voted to upgrade the PCI of a goal to 70. And if my memory serves me correct, that would be an additional general fund contribution of 14.6 million times 3 years. So I was just curious if that goal is no longer the goal, just 65 is the goal then, or, you know, those funds are coming from elsewhere. And so no change in the budget item for road improvements was necessary. And I did have another question about the gas tax for road improvements. It's my understanding that that is a figure of 31.8 million. I saw there was a slight bump on the estimation for Measure E. So that was just a little over 50 million. And our budget now, the revenues are increasing by $66.2 million. And then we've got the 31.8 from the gas tax. Then we have the American Recovery Act money. So, yeah, I'm just curious why that figure was the same, or if there was a change there on that. I also had a question concerning the increase in staff that was recommended by the city manager. I heard two figures. I believe the CFO had mentioned 54 and a half FTEs, and then the city manager had answered my question, and he had said that that was 57. And what that total cost in salaries, benefits, and pension costs, and how many of those positions are administrative in nature versus, actually boots on the ground out there, doing the work out on the streets, that sort of thing. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Thomas Cady, followed by Ray Plattel. Thomas Cady.
Mr. Thomas Cady, you may unmute by pressing *6.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Members of council, mayor, and members of the public, my name is Tom Cady. I'm a longtime resident of the city of Oxnard. And I think I wanted to start out by commending the residents of Oxnard for voting for Measure E. If we did not have Measure E funding, I think we'd be having a much different kind of conversation tonight versus where we're at and our ability to begin to renew services to our community. I think I listened to the presentations by both the city manager and the finance director, and I think it's important for the community to remember that we didn't get into the current fiscal challenges that we're in just 1 year. It was over a number of years from the Great Recession on. We never really recovered from that. And I think a lot of people, think that our current problems happened in the last couple of years or from COVID, but they were a long time coming. And now we have the ability to basically right the ship and move forward. And I really commend the city manager on the 3-year plan of incrementally rebuilding. And I think it would be important for the public to remember that we're not going to see everything fixed in this very first fiscal year, but there are a series of incremental improvements that will happen that will benefit Oxnard and our residents. So my hats off to the city manager and the council in setting their priorities, and once again, the community for approving a tax measure that I know was not universally popular, but I think will benefit us all. Thank you very much, and good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Our next speaker is Ray Plattel, followed by Angela Whitecomb, and then Mania Herrera. Ray Plattel.
Ray Plattel, you may unmute by pressing *6.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Plattel, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. Mayor, council members, city staff, and public. The budget document is way too comprehensive for a 3-minute oration, so I'm just going to pick a few items. On page 256 of the proposed 21-22 budget for the governmental fund River Ridge Golf Course Fund 651, it says the revenues derived mainly from green fees, cart fees, driving range, merchandise sales, snack bars, and banquets are used to pay for the maintenance of the golf course, capital improvement projects, and acquisition of merchandise and equipment. I submit that this is someone's dream. The reason I say this is because on page 223, expenditures by program by fund, the 651 golf course operating subfund 6401 has $368,937 proposed. This sub-fund is for things like buildings and improvements, office equipment, vehicles, cell phone, which I find strange, equipment maintenance charges, facility charges, maintenance, just to name a few. Furthermore, sub-fund 6406 has a proposed budget of $3,721,648. This sub-fund is for things like repair and maintenance, professional contract, general liability insurance, electricity, which I again find strange. Can't AGC even pay their own electric bill? Water, refuse and disposal, other services, internet, just to name a few. Furthermore, on page 225, under expenditures by type of fund, 651 golf course operating, item number 2, other O&M expense, the proposed budget is $4,063,581. So if maintenance, capital improvement projects, etc., at the golf course are supposedly covered by the aforementioned revenues, i.e. green fees, cart fees, merchandise sales, why is this infusion of city funding necessary? Am I the only one who finds this strange? And one other thing here on page 262, revenue summary by fund, Fund 148, which is for the LMD number 28, that's my LMD, decided revenue does not match the value for revenue in the 2021-22 Consolidated Engineers Report. On the expenditure side, it's not exactly, but it's very close. And for a revenue summary by fund, Fund 172, which is LMD administration, it's 49% of the total revenue for all LMDs. On the expenditure side, 170 Fund 172, again, LMD administration, it's 40% of the total expenditures for all MDs. I think these percentages are way too high. 49 and 40% are way too high for LMD administration services. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Angela Whitecomb, followed by Mania Herrera. Angela.
Angela Whitecomb.
Hello, my name is Angela Whitecomb. I am your Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Chair, or Commission Chair, and I wanted to speak to the budget and about tonight as it pertains to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. I'm really excited to see some of the things that the council has put forth and the city has put forth as far as bringing our parks back to something we can all be proud of. Our residents are really looking forward to being out and utilizing them again. And also the money that's been set aside to redo the playgrounds that are in so desperate need. They were dangerous. And with the new plans, they're going to be safe and accessible to all with the all-inclusive program. I am looking forward to seeing more native plants to support our wildlife and habitat. But I just have a couple of concerns. It would have been really helpful as a commissioner and general public if some of this information was brought to our attention that the city was following the master plan. Just a little language that said, according to the master plan, we are doing X, Y, and Z, and in the future we're going to do A, B, and C, so that just the layman would know what direction the city is coming from and where these ideas were initiated. I know that there's a lot of things that are needed for the future of the Santa Clara River Trail, the building of an aquatic center, lifeguards on the beach, resurfacing of our play courts so that our tennis center is safe and can be utilized for events again, as well as the play fields and courts and our parks in general. I would like to see the after school program be fully funded, not just what the city has put in the past, but actually putting a little bit more into it so that we don't have a waiting list. With anticipated school coming back, it's going to be needed more than ever. These children have been without for a year and a half now, and they're going to need all the support they can get and the social interaction. So I would really like to see a shot in the arm to our recreation department so that they can provide more services than what we've had in the past. Our community definitely needs it, and our children need the social interaction so they can become better
10 seconds.
citizens. So thank you for your time and consideration, and I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Angela Whitecomb. Our last speaker for this item is Mania Herrera.
Mr. Herrera?
Yes,
Yes, you have 3 minutes to speak.
thank you. Mayor Zaragoza, Mayor Pro Tem McDonald, members of the City Council. I saw the video presentation on the 2021-22 budget, and it's great to hear that due to Measure E and other factors, things are turning out better than projected. What I didn't hear in this presentation, and I know it wouldn't normally be in a budget presentation, but what I want to know, and what the people have the right to know, is what are all the Aaron Starr measures and lawsuits going to cost us taxpayers? Why do I ask this, and why does it sound like I'm picking on Aaron Starr again? Because for every step forward we take, we have to take 2 steps backwards because of him. How much have we paid so far in legal fees against Aaron Starr? How much more will we pay in the future? How much did it cost us taxpayers to fund Measure M, which required the revamping of the staff presentations? How much is it costing us to implement Measure F, which is the revamping of the permit process? In tax revenue when we lose Measure O money due to Aaron Starr's Measure N? How much did the failed recall cost us? Can we have these figures given to us during our public budget talks? These expenditures impact our budget, right? This is our money, and we have the right to know the answers to these questions. So please include these in your presentation in some form or another. Because if Aaron Starr is going to be a financial liability to the citizens of Oxnard, then we need to know how much is this liability costing us. You can't discuss a budget without talking about all of its liabilities. So I want this information, and what better place to do this than during a public hearing? Or do I have to do a records request? I don't know, but I'd like the City Council to please address my concerns and the concerns of all the citizens of Oxnard. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. So if there's no other speakers on this item, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Council members and board members, do you have any items to provide or provide direction or any adjustments to the budget that is being proposed at this time?
Mr. Mayor, would it be okay for me to start off? Because I do have one serious change that I need to recommend for the budget.
Okay, Mr. City Manager, yes, go ahead and you want to share additional information.
Yes, so
on the
thank
budget.
you. So obviously, the presentation, the videos were online. Unfortunately, when I reviewed it, there were only about 30 some views, and I know at least half of those views are department directors as well as the council members, probably more than half. So it's disappointing to be wrestling with an all-in $600 million budget without a formal presentation live. But let me try to provide a brief introduction, and then I do have to make one significant recommended change. So people have brought up, both in the public comment tonight and otherwise, again, what's happening with the balance of the American Rescue Plan funding. So I want to speak to that very quickly. So in July, so next month, at the committee as well as at the council meeting, we will have public discussions about the preliminary recommendations from staff for how to invest the American Rescue Plan funding. In August is when the Federal Treasury Department is expected to issue its final guidelines, because right now what we have, they call the preliminary final guidelines. So we just want to make sure before the council makes decisions on the balance of that funding, that we have all the rules in place. So again, we're going to bring preliminary investment ideas to the council committees in July. And then so the committees, each committee can have a discussion publicly. We'll transfer those discussions to the full council at the end of July so that the council as a group can have that conversation with each other publicly. And then we'll see what the Federal Treasury Department issues as their final guidelines in August. We, again, hopefully it will actually come in August as expected. And then we will bring back the final recommendations to the council in September for the council to make its decisions. So that's with regard to the American Rescue Plan. Now, with regard to this proposed budget, I want to say first and foremost, this is a very positive budget. And it's the first time in a long time that we've had such a positive budget. And I appreciate one of our public speakers, Mr. Cady, who took the long view about where we are right now. So he made some of the statements that I was going to make. It's been probably a decade since the city hasn't been facing whether it's cuts, reductions, or even layoffs. So it is important as you're discussing this budget tonight for everyone to remember where we've been and also how far we've come. And you can go back the whole decade, and if you think through it, there's been a lot of turmoil in this organization and with this city. But just in the short time that I've been here, I mean, I recall my very first budget that I introduced to this council was recommending $9.2 million in cuts, right? We had to implement laying off 30 staff people. We made significant reductions to services and programs, and we closed a couple of popular facilities. Those were very, very difficult decisions for that council to make at that time, but that's only 3 years ago. We continued with a weak budget the following year, and then the pandemic hit, even though we were hoping for a status quo budget going into this current year. Now, with tonight's proposed budget, as already stated, thank goodness for Measure E. Thank goodness that the voters entrusted us with this additional revenue, because now we finally have the ability to turn both the organization around and to improve the city. But as some people have stated, it's not going to happen overnight. It can't even happen in a matter of a short number of years. And this is exactly why I consider it to be the first of 3 restoration budgets. And it's important to recognize where we are as of today, as we look towards getting the first payment of Measure E at the end of this month, heading into the new fiscal year. It's important to recognize where we are, because just because the voters approved Measure E doesn't mean everything's gotten better. It means everything is going to get better. This organization, where we are, and you may recall this in the discussion when we talked about updating the city council's priorities and some of the statements I made then. Again, we've made tremendous progress, especially in the area of financial management, thanks in large part to the leadership of our CFO, Mr. Kevin Riper. But we still have a long ways to go as an organization. You know, when we talked about the priorities, I likened us to this, which is for many, many years, this organization has been treading water just to stay afloat. Again, you think back for anyone who was either involved or following City Hall, or you just look back at the prior reports or the prior budgets, and you can see that very clearly. Staff was scrambling throughout a lot of turmoil and discombobulation in the organization and across the community. Staff was scrambling to address everything that had arisen, both from the district attorney's investigation and that whopping initial audit. Staff was scrambling to address everything that was urgent at the expense of many things that were also important. And when you do that, things fall apart. So now we are prepared to actually start swimming. So we're in a situation now where we don't have to tread water just to stay afloat. We can actually start to swim. And with the city council's discussion and ultimate agreement on the council priorities, we have a purposeful direction to swim in. But as I said then, we're not going to win any Olympic medals for swimming anytime soon. So one of my goals, as I expressed during those priority discussions, is to eventually turn City Hall into a high-functioning organization. And when we can achieve that, our delivery of services and programs will also increase significantly, but that will indeed take time. We have a lot of hardworking staff across the city, and we have superstars across all of our departments. We just don't have enough. We need more. It takes time. There's a lot of reform and a lot of improvements that are required, and we, your executive team, and most of our staff really understand that, and we are working to row in unison so that we can implement the city council's policy directions. Now, meanwhile, we have to be realistic as we venture onward with the support of Measure E. And part of what I want to do is focus on the policies at hand, strive to hit a series of singles, just so we can advance the bases and eventually score. What we don't need to do is swing for the fences every time, because when you do that with a weak organization, you're going to strike out a lot. And I freely admit that we are not a strong, high-functioning organization yet, but I'm very confident that we are headed there. So with focus and patience, we will get there. Now, with that, the recommendation I have, in light of the court's final ruling yesterday with regard to the IUF litigation and that payment schedule. Now, I think the record will show that I have never disagreed with the court's ruling that the IUF, as we enacted it in this city, was inappropriate. I've never argued with the judge's ruling. I've actually said I thought it was, and I still believe it's a fair ruling. Now, what we did was we asked the court to give us a payment schedule. Under the law, it's possible to ask for up to 10 years. So we asked, I think, for 7. Now, the court disagreed, the judge disagreed, and yesterday issued the ruling saying we're going to pay it back in 3 years. We're not going to argue any of that. Again, I've never, ever disagreed with the ruling. What I disagree with and what I don't think is good for this community, if the effort here is to improve Oxnard, is with the manner in which we're being forced to pay it sooner, because while it may punish City Hall for past misdeeds, it also punishes the community for the millions of dollars that can't go into services and programs. Then you could do this both ways, right? You could have a 10-year repayment program, pay it back in full, and also reinvest in the community at the same time. But this all or nothing attitude doesn't help the community. But with that, what I'm recommending in the budget that's being proposed to you is that we're asking you to include in this budget proposal to authorize the interfund transfer of $7 million in this coming budget that's being proposed from the Street Maintenance Fund, which is Fund 105. And the funds will then be used to pay back in proportionate amounts among the 3 utilities. Now, there is a consequence to that, obviously. It's $7 million less that we would be able to put towards street work in this upcoming budget. But thank goodness we have other funding sources, so we'll still be able to make a really good push on progress with the streets. And part of the reason I'm recommending this is because this particular fund was actually funded from the IUF. So that's in addition to the budget proposal you have before you, we are recommending this one change as well. So with that, I'm going to finish my introduction, and both the CFO and all the other department directors are available for any questions the council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. So that item will be taken into consideration here on the 29th, that amendment to the budget. Thank you. We have Mayor Pro Tem, followed by Councilmember Teran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say thank you to staff, to Mr. Riper, Mr. Nguyen, and all the staff that supported them in this effort. I've been with the city, in the city, working for the city in one form or another since 1977. So I've been through this exercise a few times, and it has not always been very easy. In fact, sometimes it's been very, very painful. And it's always a sad day when you have to tell people that you work with that we no longer have money for your position or what have you. And we've gone through this exercise a number of times. You can see the tiredness of our community due to all the budgetary cuts. Woolley Road, I drove down the other day, it looks pretty much abysmal. But the sad state of affairs is we just don't have the staff to get on it the way we should be. But we're now finally seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's going to get brighter. I'm thoroughly convinced it's going to get brighter, and I feel better about this budget than I felt about a lot of budgets over a lot of years. So, and one of the speakers alluded to it, we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of here overnight, but we are on the right track to improvement. And I have to give credit to all the staff that worked on all the levels to do this, all the way from the people that generated the line work and gave it to Mr. Riper giving it to the city manager, and so on and so forth. This has been a huge team effort. And I feel better about this budget than I felt about a lot of budgets over the past many number of years, in a long, long time. So thank you to all of you that undertook this effort, that presented this program, this budget. We're actually seeing an increase in our general fund reserve. We're going to see a lot of good things. We still have some challenges, but we'll get through them. We will always prevail. We have good people that work here, good people that take care of this community. So I think overall we're truly blessed with all the assets we have, and now it's time to get on the right road again and moving forward into the future. So thank you to all of you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the time to make comments.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Teran, followed by Councilwoman Basua. Councilmember Teran.
Thank you, Mayor. I too would like to echo the comments of our Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you to our CFO, Mr. Riper, for the presentation, but also putting all this information together. I know that's his role to do that, but we are very fortunate, and I hope that the general public knows just how incredibly fortunate we are as a city to have a professional like Mr. Riper to be able to put this together and present it for us in a way that we can look at and be informed of the decision that we're making as a community and as a council of representatives. Thank you to the city manager as well, city manager's office, and all the staff who contributed to this year's budget. Really what I had wanted to say has pretty much been said, and so I won't just belabor on it, but I do want to say that where we are now, as was stated earlier, it didn't take 1 year to get into the financial issues that the city was facing, and the city faced it for the better part of a decade at the least, and it's not going to take 1 year to get out of it. This is one first step forward. Thank you again to the voters who entrusted the city with Measure E to be able to help us make that positive step forward in getting our services to a level that they are calling for and that they truly deserve as residents of this city. That being said, remember also to the general public, as was shown in the video about the budget, this is at minimum a 3-year recovery plan or restoration plan. This isn't something that when the calendar hits July 1st, that all of a sudden we're gonna have these beautiful landscapes and we're gonna have perfect roads. This is a process that takes time, just as recovering from your own financial challenges takes time. So I hope that the public can remember that, keep that in mind, be patient, but also be supportive, but also hold us and our city officials accountable as we move forward with these budget items. And the last thing I'll say is that in regards to this being a long-term process for us getting to the financial issues we were in, there were admittedly by, I think, most of the people on this call and out in the community, there were a lot of mistakes made by the city in the past. And I hope people can also appreciate in your personal life, if you've ever had a relationship, a former relationship with an ex-spouse, ex-significant other, where, we're now 10 years out from that relationship and they're saying, oh, you're still the same, you haven't changed. It's like, you don't know me, I've changed. And so I just hope people can stop focusing on the past and let's look at what's happening now as we look towards the future. Because if we keep hanging on to, globbing onto the past and things that happened in the past, I mean, we're going to be stuck there. That's all we're going to be doing is dealing with those distractions. So I hope folks can keep that in mind as well. Call it out when we're in the present and there is wrongdoing or things that are going wrong, as we had earlier, mentioned earlier, but look towards the future and what we're doing now to be part of the solution, not globbing onto the past. And those are my comments, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilwoman Basua.
Thank you, Mayor. I also wanted to start by thanking the finance staff, the administration staff, every single staff member in the city. I personally know it takes a lot of time and energy to put these budgets together. So thank you for all the hard work. Also, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. So, Mr. City Manager, you are asking that we go ahead and authorize the reduction of the improved street maintenance fund that is currently suggested at 14.6. We reduce that by 7 million.
City Manager.
That is correct.
Okay, so, and currently, in our current budget, we have 11.5 million budgeted for streets. So we are going to see a deduction in that to go down to 7 million. So we're losing about $3 million in our streets budget.
Yeah, so cumulatively, it's going to be a net effect of 7 million less. And part of the reason we're in working this through the CFO is, so we had anticipated in the current fiscal year a $5 million payment because we were going into court and asking for the payment schedule, and we were hoping for the 5 million and some change over 7 years. So we'd anticipated that. So in the current fiscal budget, we have that. So we now, with the court's ruling, we will actually be bringing that item on the council's next agenda just to make the appropriation. And then in what you have in the proposed budget for 21-22 is another 5 million. So what we're looking at is an additional 7 from the streets fund. And then we would have 2 years left under the court's 3-year requirement. We'd have 2 years left of approximately 10 million. But keep in mind, the court did leave the door open for us to conduct a new nexus study and resubmit it to the court for approval. So what happens in the out years is still remains not known, right? That could be reduced. So that's part of why we're proposing these numbers.
With the study.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Along with the study, yes. And thank you for that explanation. I just wanted to make sure that we understand what's going to happen. I mean, this is a really great budget, and we are looking at reducing the street maintenance budget to even lower. So I definitely support this. I think it's really important that we pay the fund back and that we have a plan. But I also want to know if it's possible at a later time to bring this item back, just so our residents are aware of the things that are not going to get done because of this, just so we can have some transparency and they understand that, what they can expect. Because I can just kind of see it now, they're going to say, we passed Measure E, why aren't our streets getting fixed? but I want to make sure that our message is loud and clear. We're trying to repay back something, and we're trying to do the best that we can with what we have. And we understand that these things are going to be limited, but we do actually want to make sure our streets get taken care of. So I just want to be as transparent as possible, but I definitely support doing this and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dragan.
Thank you. I'll echo everybody else's comments. I want to thank staff for all the hard work and dedication on the budget. I don't think it falls on one single person, but it is a complete team effort. So thank you to everyone who had a hand in this. Second, just to kind of further along the questions posed by Councilwoman Basula, by taking the reduction of whatever amount whatever number of $1 million it is on streets, will we be affected at all by the gas tax because of lack of funding on the city's part?
So we have Tatiana can.
Councilmember Madrigal, let me address that. This is Craig Becker, interim works director. So I think what you're talking about is there is a match requirement associated with RMRA funding, which is the gas tax that the city receives under SB1. That match is roughly $4.5 million. It varies from year to year. We would still have money committed through the Measure E allotment and our CIP dollars to meet that matching requirement, even if council were to move forward and transfer the $7 million back to the water utilities. Hope that addresses your question.
No, yes, it does. Thank you, Mr. Beck. Second, as with everything, things are looking great. But as always, just always be cautious, pessimistic. And, as another council member always states, is there a plan A, plan B, plan C, and even a plan D all the way through Z in place? What would happen? We have a housing, like not necessarily a boom, but a bust, or if other things happen in the city, the government, federal and or state, has been giving, a lot of help to, local businesses, to residents, so on and so forth. It looks like, this upcoming year that all that help is going to slowly but surely fade away. So, the recession or lack thereof of a recession was due to that. What would happen, if, we truly are hit by a recession? Is there a plan in place, for the following year's budget, so as to, we don't get the same situation that we just got out of?
Mr. City Manager. Okay, thank you. I'm sure you know that a budget is a roadmap that we look at, and the budget is a plan that we look at and we adjust it accordingly. One of the things that I like to mention before I make my comments, that those $7 million or those dollars that are going to be transferred are staying within the city. They're going back to our utilities, so we're not paying the monies outside of the city, which I think it's important for the public to understand that that money is going to stay within the city and into our utilities. Councilmember Partell.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank all the council members for their comments. I'd like to thank Mr. Cady for his comment, his first one with respect to thanking the voters for Measure E. And it's been said much better than I can say it. If Measure E was not passed, this would be an entirely different day, an entirely different day. Ms. Whitcomb, one of the comments that you made with respect to the plans and the Parks and Rec, well, I can tell you things happen, just as Councilman Madrigal asked, things happen. The budget's a living document. We just recently had to replace some plumbing work in Eastwood Park, Little League, and I want to thank Paul Lemos for bringing it to our attention, and the city staff for getting on it. Things happen and come up, and you do, Mr. Madrigal is right. You do have plan A, B, and C, the crystal ball is going to have in the future. With respect to the council, again, thank you. This 5 years priority, we picked what we think are the most important things. We didn't get everything. Some would say maybe we weren't as elaborate as we should have been, or we were too frugal, but that's what the council voted on, and that's what the council approved. The comments about staff, it is a team effort. And I can tell you, it's the most impressive document since, I've been involved in this council, June 13. And at that time, you found out you couldn't trust the numbers. That's not the situation now. The leadership that has been brought in, CFO, Mr. Beck, and others, Mr. Viper, I beg your pardon, Mr. Beck, Mr. Viper. They made sure that the numbers are right. Our auditors have proven the numbers are right. The staff that is working there, we have good staff. Those that have been on the council a number of years will remember the CFO's seat was a revolving door. This was not a good place. And Councilman Turan is 100% right. There are people that will never forget that, and they will continually paint this council and this management and this staff with the sins of the past. You should never forget what happened in the past, but you can't live in the past. You got to move forward. And I'm very grateful. It's been brought up. We have a larger amount of reserves than we've had in the past. I remember asking, what would we do with bankruptcy? I remember Mr. Nyhoff refusing to address those questions, becoming very angry that they would even be asked. We've come a long way in a short period of time. And it's actually, it's not as short as you would think, but I'm very, very lucky to serve on a council that's got this sort of situation looking at it right now. Even with all the issues that we have to deal with, those of us that have been on the council a period of time understand. Those of us that don't, haven't been on the council, I'm sure they're seeing it. And the public, please, public, remember, we're moving forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Riper, you want to share a couple of comments before I share mine? I see your...
Yes, Mayor, thank you very much. First, on behalf of finance staff and all the employees who worked on the budget across all the departments, I want to thank the council for the compliments about the team effort. And three of you touched on team effort. That's exactly what it was. Mayor, there were several questions posed by members of the public during the public comment portion of the hearing. Would you like me to address those questions briefly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There was a question about the relatively flat spending for parks and open spaces, and also for traffic and road improvements during my presentation. The spending referred to in that question is actually in the Measure O fund, Fund 104, not the general fund, Fund 101. The city manager's budget message talks about all the proposed spending increases in the general fund, Fund 101, including for streets, parks, open spaces. The speaker was correct that Measure O fund spending is relatively flat because Measure O isn't growing all that fast. The action, the story in this budget is in Fund 101, the general fund, not Fund 104, the Measure O fund. There was a question about the gas tax at $31.8 million, but our budget shows that gas tax revenue for fiscal year 21-22 is estimated at $6.1 million. So I'm not sure where the $31.8 million came from. Mr. Partell commented that general fund revenues are up $66 million, and that's exactly right from my presentation. Remarkably, general fund revenues up $66 million, almost all of it thanks to Measure E. And finally, Mr. Partell remembered from my presentation a reference to 54.5 FTEs, and he's close. I actually said 53.5 FTEs. The 53.5 FTEs proposed are just for the general fund, just for Fund 101. The city manager mentioned 57 FTEs citywide because that's all funds. So there are 3.5 FTEs proposed in funds other than the general fund, Fund 101. So that's why the two different numbers, slightly different. Again, most of the action is in Fund 101, the general fund, for the fiscal year 21-22 budget. There was a question about the golf course spending. Golf course revenue, like in fiscal year 2019-20, and like this fiscal year that's about to end in just 2 weeks, golf course revenue covers all golf course expenses. There are no transfers budgeted or made between the general fund and the golf course operating fund. The golf course operating fund is self-sufficient. We budget now, both for last fiscal year, the current fiscal year, and for next fiscal year, the total spending and the total revenue for the golf course, unlike in years prior to fiscal year 2019-20, because we have a new golf course operator. And the expenses that they incur with the revenue that they raise are reflected in the gross expenditures and gross revenues of the golf course fund. But there is no general fund subsidy for next year. There isn't one this year, and there wasn't one last year. No general fund money for the golf course. Mr. Ray Blattell asked about Fund 172, Landscape Maintenance District Administration. That's just the name of the fund. Not all of those expenditures, not even close to all of them, are for administration purposes. Rather, that fund is a holding fund for a bunch of different landscape maintenance districts. So all of the costs for multiple landscape maintenance districts are included in Fund 172, which just has the name LMD Administrative Services. As former Assistant CFO Donna Ventura explained to Council in mid-March when she presented the new chart of accounts, that will be changed starting July 1st, 2022 with a new chart of accounts. Thank you for the time, Mayor.
And Mr. Riper, one of the things that I think I mentioned to you too is that the golf course is currently shown as an enterprise, as a general fund, but potentially or will be an enterprise fund or is an enterprise fund. Is that correct?
Yes, in the early years, the golf course fund was an enterprise fund, and then auditors Edie and Payne came in and said, your general fund is paying at least $1 million a year in subsidies to the golf fund. It can't be an enterprise fund. It needs to come into the general fund group where it's been for the last 4 or 5 years. But now that the auditors have seen the golf course fund operating results for fiscal year 2019-20 and what they're going to see for fiscal year 20-21, they know that the golf course is now covering all of its costs with 0 general fund subsidy, and they have said it's okay to restore its status as an enterprise fund. You are correct, Mayor.
Self-supporting. Thank you. Mayor Matragal, you need additional information?
Yeah, just one quick question. Just because it was mentioned right now with the golf course. So like the golf course, we make a revenue of at least $4.5 million due to the golf course.
The golf course generates at least $4.5 million of revenue, but it also has expenditures of $4.5 million.
No. Yeah,
but yes,
that's why I got that number.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where's that shown on the budget?
It's shown in the schedule called in the section of the document called budget schedules, and the first schedule is revenues, and it's Fund 641, the golf course fund. Yeah, that's where the.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to make some comments and I'll let the city manager then finish off. First of all, council members and members of the staff and audience, it was shared that this is the first positive budget in 10 years. The first positive budget in 10 years, which I believe it's outstanding news. So I want to thank the voters for passing Measure E. Measure E is going to generate approximately $51.9 million in fiscal year 21-22. And that's going to help our city council work well with our 2021-25 5-year priorities. Measure E fund is vital for achieving those necessary steps and restoring programs and services that the community wants and deserves. It'll maintain, of course, the 25 priorities that the city council adopted. And of course, in February of this year, more than 2,000 community members joined what we call the Priorities Conversation Survey. Join the Priority Conservation Survey. And they assisted the city council in determining the 2021-25 priorities, which is extremely important for all of us. I'm just a few comments that I want to make sure all the council members made some excellent comments, but that does not give credence to all the hard work that our staff has done and put in compiling this budget. So I want to commend them for an excellent budget. And again, I want to thank our city manager and our staff for the hard work in compiling this budget. It's not perfect. And as mentioned, it's a roadmap. It is a restorative budget that we can adjust accordingly. But I just want to commend our city staff and especially our residents for passing Measure E, which is really extremely important to all of us. Thank you for that. And Mayor, Councilmember Turan.
Yes, thank you for the additional time. I'll be very quick, Mr. Mayor. One thing that was mentioned by our Parks and Recreation Community Services Chair, Ms. Whitecomb, did bring something to my mind, and I apologize for not mentioning it in my time earlier. But when we work on things, or when funding happens for things that, such as the master plan for parks, I'm hoping that there's some way that we can intentionally make that, point that out or highlight that this is working toward our master plan process. Along those lines, and I've heard this is something that's already in process, is anytime Measure E is used to fund our parks maintenance or new fleet vehicles, anything like that, I certainly thank the city for looking at how we can let the public know some tangible items that Measure E goes towards. So I see those two items as connected. If we could just be intentional about pointing out and highlighting for the public when these tax dollars, when our budget goes towards items such as those. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't need a commitment to it at this point, but I just wanted to put it out there on the table. Thank you again very much.
Thank you. And our final comments, Mr. City Manager.
Yes. First of all, we fully agree with those sentiments. And I actually want to just not necessarily respond, but to tag on to what Councilmember Madrigal spoke about, which is keeping an open mind towards what happens if things don't go as expected. What is the plan B? What is the plan C? Which is a really important thing to keep in mind, especially given what we've all just gone through in the last 15 months, something that none of us expected. And we had to navigate our way through that. So with regard to if there's another recession or God forbid, another disaster or crisis, depending on the severity of it and how swift it is, we do have our reserve. So if it's a mild recession, I think our reserves can get us through. If it's some sort of a disaster, then obviously we would be calling on FEMA in most cases, not all. But recall that a year ago, we did resort to asking our staff to give back their medical premiums for 6 months, which they did. Now, as we're coming out of this pandemic, and thanks to the recession both being swift, although as we say, swift and deep, but also rebounding quite well, better than anyone's expectations for whatever reasons. We're able to, according to the agreement we had with our employees, we're able to make them whole. But that is just one example of coming up with a plan B when we have a unexpected event like that. Because and again, I appreciate Councilmember Madrigal reminding us of all this, because there are, outside of what we do or don't do, there are at times external forces that impact what happens here, whether it's forces of nature or forces of higher government, such as the state and the feds. Thank you. And as a reminder, I do have a recommendation to reduce the streets funds by $7 million and use that to transfer towards the IUF payment. So I would like that to be part of a motion to, at this point, agree with this budget. You will actually pass the budget, adopt the budget at the next council meeting. So your action tonight is not to adopt the budget, but hopefully to agree to the recommendation I have about the $7 million. Thank you.
So Mr. City Manager, City Attorney, is that part of the recommendation for today? That the City Council and Housing Authority conduct a public hearing for fiscal year 2021 proposed budget for the Oxnard City Council and Oxnard Housing Authority, and direct staff regarding any adjustments. So the adjustments is the $7 million. Do we have a motion on this item?
I will make a motion, Mayor, to move forward with the recommended action and make the adjustments necessary in the street budget, reduce it by $7 million.
Okay.
Second that.
Mayor, if I can ask a question, legal counsel. The recommendation here was just to do a public hearing and provide direction. Doesn't say anything about any action item. I'm not sure if we can make a motion, but we can certainly provide that direction and suggestion to the city manager and bring it back to us.
So that was that was a question I asked Mr. City Manager, City Attorney.
So the motion would be a way of gauging consensus. It isn't the action, as the city manager said, but it is a clear instruction to, when we come back on the 29th, to have that worked into the budget, what the city manager has proposed.
So we're not adopting it, we're just recommending to be brought back for the 29th meeting. Mayor Pro Tem, you okay with that?
If our attorney says that it's a legitimate action, I'm okay with it.
Well, so if I can explain further. So we're here tonight to discuss the budget and to take direction from council. Because of circumstances that have arisen surrounding the budget proposal has changed as the city manager has stated. So that is within the contemplated action that's on the agenda, which is discussion of the budget. So that proposed shift has been laid out by the city manager, and now we're trying to get the council's consensus on whether that should come forward on the 29th for actual adoption.
So that would be a recommended adjustment.
Correct. So it'd be similar if one of the council members had some suggested adjustment based on your review of the budget. That's the purpose of this hearing, is to have that direction come out of the council. In this case, the city manager, because of the circumstances, has suggested it to you, and now we're trying to get your consensus on that.
Okay, thank you. So we had a first by Councilman Basu and a second by, I can't remember the second. Perello? Councilmember Perello?
Perello.
Okay, so Councilwoman first, second by Perello, roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Councilmember Perello,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Madrigal,
Yes.
Councilmember Turan,
Yes.
Councilmember Basua,
Yes.
and I'm going to refer to Commissioner Andrade from the Housing Authority Commission. Commissioner Andrade?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion passes 8-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Our next item is at this time in place, we set public hearing for item J3, a Public Works Department. The subject is adoption of the resolution approving engineer's report and ordering the levy and collection of assessments for fiscal year 2021-22 within the city landscape maintenance district. The recommendation is the city council acting as the legislative body for landscape maintenance district 1, hold a public hearing to receive public testimony regarding the proposed fiscal year 2021 assessments in the city's LMDs, and 2, adopt a resolution approving the fiscal year 2021-22 consolidated engineer's report and ordering the levy and collection of assessments for fiscal year 2021-22 within the city's LMDs pursuant to Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972. We start by the city clerk's certification of publication and any written communication, if any. Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor. There was a legal notice for this public hearing published in Vida newspaper on June 3rd, 2021, and the city clerk's office received written communication on this item, which has been forwarded to council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. And Assistant Public Works Director, Mr. Howlett, in accordance with Measure E, posted a video presentation regarding this item and is available to answer any brief clarifying questions council members may have before we take public testimony on this item. Council will deliberate after the public hearing has been closed. Okay. Council members? Okay. Well, now I'm going to open the public hearing testimony portion.
I have a comment.
Oh,
I
Perrella.
have a comment, Mayor.
Okay. Councilman
So,
Perrella.
Sorry.
That's okay.
If there's going to be, I live in LMD 13. If there's going to be discussion on LMD 13, I need to remove myself from the discussion on direction of the city attorney. And I appreciate that direction.
And thank you for sharing that too, Councilmember. I also have, if the LMD number 3, I would have to recuse myself from that for a potential conflict of interest because I have a property of real estate in that LMD number 3.
Correct. And thank you both for bringing that up. And also, so that applies if any particularized discussion concerning either of those districts should arise. And also on the votes, you would be acknowledging that you're abstaining from the district in which you have your real property interest.
Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to open the public testimony portion of this public hearing. Members of the public are invited to sign up to speak on this item on the city website. Anyone wishing to sign up before the deadline has 3 minutes to speak on this item. And Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers on this item?
Yes, Mayor Zaragoza, we have 4 public speakers for this public hearing.
Okay, and we have Douglas Partell, followed by Ray Partell, Aaron Starr, and Alice Purcell. Douglas Partell will be the first one, followed by Ray.
Mr. Partello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, everyone, again. I see some problems here with pushing this forward for the role for the assessments. One of the major problems that stands out is the Renew Oxnard program that transfers funds from the LMD to the city crews of NBS Civic Mike. I don't believe this is a proper use of LMD funds under the Landscape and Lighting Act of 1972. The Streets and Highway Code 22655 places restrictions on the use of LMD funds. And so it really is there to use for the maintenance of the landscape. And they're trying to pass it off. NBS has a website that says this is incidental expenses. Well, I'm sorry. They had $1.6 million in revenue. They have a contract for $403,650, of which for the public information request, I've compiled their current spendings well over $125,000. That is not incidental expenses. Why, since 2015-16, when NBS first got involved and they did audits on the boundaries, which are still issues. We can see it with MAD number 4. There's issues about those boundaries. There's issues with other boundaries. Why is the problem still there in terms of they created a manual for city staff to learn how to manage these districts. Yet we have 2 organizations that are having to manage these LMDs when there's only 3 line items. There's cost to contractors, there's electricity and water. It's not that complicated. And we have 2 organizations. The average administrative expenses for all the LMDs, there's 37 of them. I don't know why there's 2 of one. They split up one of them. There's 37 in total. Why is that 54.2% of the entire expenses for administrative costs? Totally ridiculous. I mean, this is just outrageous that over half of the money that should be spent on what the Landscaping Act says being spent on administrative costs. Just crazy. Why hasn't the staff taken this over? Why are we paying NBS still? We've got LMDs that also have some problems with, they're over their max rate. Number 37, number 42, number 40, number 51, and number 53. They're all over the max per parcel rate. We also have a line item on-call contingency and reserves. Well, we now know with public information requests that this is the Renew Oxnard program. Last year, they actually had it under special projects, and they had it labeled Community Outreach for CFDs. No, city manager, it's not Melrose Place, it's Melrose. And it's a scheme to get these LMDs converted to Melrose. We also have overage for water. In some districts, we have.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you. Ray Partell, followed by Aaron Starr.
Mr. Plattel?
Hello?
Yes, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. Mayor, council members, city staff, and public, good evening. First of all, many weeks ago, when these LMDs first appeared on the council agendas, the public had many questions and comments. The public were promised answers to these questions at the last council meeting, and there were no answers offered. I guess either city staff either doesn't not know the answers, or they are not telling, or don't care, one or the other. But we'd really like an explanation regarding these charges. We deserve answers. It's our money, folks. It's our money. Upon reviewing the budgets and accounts for my LMD, I have even more questions. Recall that I mentioned at the last council meeting that the deeper one looks into this, the more questions evolve. For example, water. Why is my district paying so much for water? In my district, there is the perimeter of only about 2 blocks square, which requires watering. And this is only for the parkways and median. Why so much for water and electricity? What are we paying for? Electronic controller for the irrigation valves for this 2 block square can't consume this much. Are we also paying for the street lights throughout the district? And why are there 2 electric bills for each month? I assume one is for Southern California Electric, but what's the other one? Is this for the California Power Alliance charges? And speaking of the CPA, didn't the city ultimately opt out of the CPA? Regardless of what the city did, how about the city opting out for our LMD districts? It should be noted that unlike our personal residences, we did not have the opportunity to opt out of the CPA for our respective LMDs. So if the city would please take action and opt us out, it would save us some money. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Aaron Starr, followed by Alicia Purcell. Aaron Starr.
Aaron Starr?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. So I assume that you've looked at the written communications that come from members of Moving Oxnard Forward, representing roughly half of the districts. We're very concerned about the legality of what the city is doing. In particular, the Renew Oxnard program, the Community Outreach for CFD formation. The Landscaping and Lighting Act only allows the levy of assessments to fund improvements, the servicing and maintenance of improvements and incidental costs. And that's covered by a number of sections of the Streets and Highways Code. We have the position that the outreach that's being done is not a public improvement cost for which property owners can be assessed. There's no special benefit to them for doing this, and there's nothing in the engineer's report that say this is a special benefit to them. We believe as well, as mentioned in the letter, that there's a problem with having way too large surpluses in these LMDs. According to according to the Streets and Highways Code 22656, if there's a surplus in the improvement fund at the end of the fiscal year, then it needs to be carried forward and applied as a credit against the next year's assessment. That's not being done. We have LMDs out there that literally have surpluses large enough to cover several years worth of expenditures. So we just think this is just patently unlawful. Now, I think this can be solved. And first of all, I'm going to surprise you. I'd like to actually applaud the city manager on what he's doing with the Melrose District, CFD number 5. coming back in 2 weeks with a modified proposal where you'll cut out the 1.6 million being charged to those residents for fire services. And there was never a good reason to charge the people in that CFD for fire services, a service that's provided to everybody else. But I think that you need to look back at the LMDs as well, and that's $1.6 million. And there's no reason why you can't come back in 2 weeks and candidly zero it out. There's no reason why this shouldn't be part of the general fund. Everybody gets the benefit of public landscaping. So that's what I would suggest. I think it solves a legal issue for you. And I think that would be a good way to go. So appreciate your consideration, and let's try and move Oxnard forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia Parcell.
Alicia Purcell.
I'm here.
Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thanks. Quickly, I'd like to remind Mania Herrera that the judge yesterday said the city created the $36.5 million problem for themselves. We warned the council about their illegal behaviors, and if they would listen and do the right thing in the first place, it wouldn't require lawsuits to remedy them. So the city's causing its own legal costs. On the LMD topic, city seems to pretend that just because some past issues with LMDs have been fixed, that there are no more problems. And when residents point out there are still remaining issues, the council usually just ignores us, but that doesn't make the problems go away. I presume your reaction to River Park's complaint is only because Mr. Tran has a special election in November. So what about the rest of us who are in LMDs? Besides the issues of illegality raised in the 2 written communications that we've sent you, I'm going to note some more things I've learned about how the LMD funds are handled by the city, and it's not pretty. Others have noted what a high percentage of the LMD monies are used for administrative expenses rather than for taking care of the landscaping. And those numbers were based on the budgets in the engineer's report. But sadly, the situation is much worse than that. At the end of the year, when the accounting staff does the journal entries to distribute the administrative expenses, there's something interesting that happens. For last fiscal year, there was about $9,000 of direct staff overhead charges taken out of LMD number 14, California Cove, but the budget for direct staff overhead was only $6,100. So they booked a little bit less than $6,100 as direct staff overhead. And where did they put the rest? They claimed that over $1,600 of it was water utility expense. And another $1,200 of it was called electric expense. It wasn't. The actual direct staff overhead cost is 57% higher in this district than what the city reports as having been spent on direct overhead because it's being misclassified in the accounting records. So unfortunately, Mr. Perella, we still can't trust the city's numbers. It's being done this way across most of the LMDs. It's not just LMD 14. And it results in the public being given false numbers which overstate the utility costs and understate the admin costs. Another issue is that many of the LMDs earn thousands of dollars of interest income every year because they have large fund balances. One had more than $17,000 of interest income last year, but in the budgets and the engineer's report, it does not even acknowledge that as a revenue source, and they don't apply it to reduce the levy amounts. Why not?
20 seconds.
These are not things that are happening from the past. They're happening right now. Finally, like Mr. Partell, I also want to know whether the LMD's electric accounts were opted out of Clean Power Alliance to reduce their costs like you did for the general fund. Because if you leave them in, they're paying higher rates and have less money for their landscaping. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other speakers, I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. Mr. City Manager, we want to make some comments on this item before we go to the council members.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. This item is similar, but in some respects, but in other respects, nothing at all like the CFD 5 at River Park. And I understand that LMDs in this city has been an ongoing saga that we struggle to improve year after year. But even with that, let me just inject a dose of reality here, because it's not the kind of situation where it's so simple to say the city should zero them out. So let's just look back at what LMDs are, right? These are agreements similar to CFDs, though CFD is basically a modern LMD that's a lot more flexible, but these districts were part of the agreements for the various housing, the respective housing developments that were built at the time that they were built. So if you think about it, the agreement is premised on the district paying for those areas of maintenance, landscaping, what have you, tree planting, flower planting, whatever the mix of services are. The situation we're in, though, is because the original LMD formation basically did not contemplate future changes in state law that would prevent the assessments from increasing with the cost of living, with the cost of goods and services and fuel and equipment and labor and so on, that some of these LMDs are essentially broken in the sense that they're assessing the same amounts per property from when the districts were formed, right? Just like the example we have at Mandalay, where it's capped at $47 per property. So the total amount for those various LMDs simply cannot provide for the services that are needed because the cost of all those services over the years have increased. So ergo, you have an LMD that is really not functional, which is why the level of service is so poor. Now, in our efforts to try to fix this, to improve this, we embarked on this Renew program to discuss with the various communities options of what to do. And I want to point out that with Mr. Starr's petition, as usual, it's very misleading because it only states certain things, but not all the relevant information. So in the petition that they provided us last time, it states in there that the funds expended on the Renew Oxnard program are intended, or instead looking for ways to maintain additional improvements other than those contained within the LMD formation documents, including general benefit areas outside of the district boundaries and including neighborhoods not currently within any LMD boundary. Okay, what does it not say? It doesn't say, because when you look at the entire Renew program and everyone's able to view recorded videotapes of those community meetings, there are a slew of options, which include you could, as a neighborhood, do nothing different is an option. You can work to increase your amount if you want better services. You could agree to just decrease the level of service you receive and keep your current assessment amounts. It's also an option to expand the area if other neighbors want to also have those added services, because that would provide economies of scale. That's also an option. We're open to some of these options, and there were others that are not. It's up to them. But the consequence is, and I want to make this very clear, because if you want to follow Mr. Starr down this rabbit hole, I want to make it very clear. If you want to decrease your LMD, or if you want to vote to zero it out, so be it. But the consequence will be the impact to your neighborhood. It's similar to River Park. If everybody there wants to zero out all of their assessments, so be it, but it will be an impact to the quality of life of your neighborhood. So again, I just want to be clear about what LMDs are. It's not so easy that we can just say, okay, let's just zero everything out, because these were not the arrangements that were made when these developments were built. So now, and if we want to go down this path, then we need a policy discussion among this council that we should never have CFDs anymore going forward. That's also a reality that is possible. But then there's an impact with that with regard to what does that do for the cost of housing construction and development. So it's a fair policy debate and discussion to have, and I hope we have it in this coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Council members, any questions on this item? Councilman Tehran?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions and then a few comments. So there was a statement by one of the speakers about half of the money of one of the districts being spent on administrative costs. I apologize. I was taking notes, but I didn't write down which of those districts it was. Did any of our staff catch that? Which district it was referred to that half of the money went toward administrative costs?
I'll see if our staff can respond who are on the line, but I did want to make one more comment because I can't remember whether it was Mr. Partell or Mr. Platell that said that we didn't provide the answers. We actually did. It's published. It's in the report. And they're actually specifically called out to your specific question. So your names to Mr. Partell and Mr. Platell, if you look in the staff report, it's in there, and you can even see your names written because we responded directly. Thank you.
Beck, did you pick that up, or maybe your staff? On the half of the cost?
Mayor, no, I don't have those details in front of me this evening. We can certainly look at that. Guess is that it's a classification of an expense, and maybe it's being misconstrued as to what that expense is and whether it's delivering services and managing the LMDs versus administrative, which many times can be ministerial in nature. So we can dig into that particular, we can go back and play the tape and look into that particular LMD and those particular costs and get some detail.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I only bring that up because when I hear half of the cost, that certainly does perk my my ears. But I just wondered what the total cost was if we're looking at half the cost. If the total cost of the LMD, let's say it's one of these LMDs that are paying, you know, $80 a year, and it's only, you know, X number of houses, then, you know, what half of the cost isn't very hard to reach. But I do appreciate the response, Mr. Beck, because I do hope that we can find consistency in how we're doing classifications of our expenditures within the LMDs. I'm not stating that I doubt that's happening, but if there's a chance that that might have been missed in a few places, I hope that we can tighten that up moving forward. Another question I had was around the question from, I believe, Mr. Platell about the water usage and the electricity utility usage. Is there a reason that there are two utility bills, or excuse me, two electricity bills, as he mentioned? Is that accurate? And do we know why that is specifically for that LMD? And I'm just in case there are other LMDs that are in a similar situation, we have clarification on why that is.
I don't have those details in front of me this evening, but typically what happens is you have different meters. So every neighborhood within the city is metered under an Edison essentially grid, and those grids don't always align with certain boundaries, and so you will get two different electrical bills based on those different metering options. That is my guess this evening. Again, we'll look into those details and provide a more detailed.
Great, thank you. And then my last question before my comments is just ballpark, approximately how many households or homes or properties are we talking about here for all the LMDs that are in front of us right now as on this item? Just ballpark, doesn't have to be an exact number.
Steve, do you have that?
I would defer to Amanda, our consultant with MBS, to see if she has that information. Amanda, can you nod yes or no if you have that readily available?
Well, it's on the first page of the report, but as I'm scrolling through, it's freezing due to the file size. So I'm trying to get it for you. If you can circle back to me, I'd be happy to provide that for you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate if we can get that. And I'll just go ahead and move forward with my comments so we can wrap up my time here. The petition that was sent forward by Mr. Starr, I had mentioned this last time on June 1st. I want to thank the people who are civically engaged and looking at this issue and signing their names to petitions put in front of them. I know the city manager addressed the petition a little bit in his comments. Mr. Starr had mentioned that they were signatories or signatures who are representing half of the districts. And that's out of 30 some odd districts, I believe. And I tried to count it as I saw the names that were provided. I counted it a couple of times because I seem to recall on the June 1st meeting that they submitted the same thing or a similar thing, but there were 80 some odd signatures, but there were less this time, but they said it was an amendment to the previous one. And I'm not asking a question, it's a statement that they had 73 signatures from what I could count based on what they submitted to us today around 1 o'clock. And I asked how many households are represented in all of these districts, because if we have several thousand and we have 73 people who are taking this as an important issue in those districts, I hope that other people can start thinking about accessing Civic Mike and NBS to see what this is all about and seeing what they can do about their LMDs, because it's their homeowners, it's their district. They should know that they have the power to keep it the same, to change it, to do what they'd like. So I just wanted to mention that. The last thing I'll say is we just took $7 million from streets in something else or in the previous item, and that's going to come forward back to council for our next item when that comes in the budget at the next meeting. But to now look at taking all of the $1.6 million for the LMDs in addition to that, and in addition to what we talked about earlier with the CFD for River Park, yet we have people also objecting to us hiring more staff. I mean, if we take on all of the LMDs into the general fund, yet try to do it with the existing staff levels, I'm having trouble understanding how that logic or how that math works out. And so I appreciate the comments on that and the difference between the CFD and the LMD that the city manager referred to earlier. I read through the engineering report, and I have to say that I really want to work more closely with the staff on this moving forward, just because I don't live in an LMD myself. I never have in almost all my life living in the city of Oxnard. And so it's something I've been learning a little bit more about as we go into this. So I would certainly like to have a little bit more close working with staff as we go forward on this item. Lastly, I hope it's recognized that addressing constituents is what a big part of my role is, regardless of whether an election is coming up or not. So cool story, but the alternative was to just ignore the constituents. I mean, that's not my style, so sorry. But thanks for watching my videos. I appreciate it, Ms. Purcell. All right, I will go ahead and turn it back to the mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Member, and I'm sure that Mr. Beck will provide this additional information that you needed to all of us as we progress on this item. Thank you. And again, you know, we like to entertain a motion on this item. And do we have motion on this item from council members? Okay, let me see.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the recommended action.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Mayor Pro Tem is first, second by.
Pardon me, Mayor. I'll accept it except for LMD 13.
And also I'd like to share too that except for LMD number 3 due to a potential conflict. Okay, so roll call.
Councilmember Basua,
Yes.
Councilmember Madrigal,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Aye.
Councilmember Turan,
I would like to go on record stating that I do not live in an LMD, and from what I can see on these maps we have, I don't think any neighborhoods in my district are affected by this decision. So no.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perrello,
Yes, and I'm abstaining from LMD 13.
Mayor Zaragoza.
Yes, and except for LMD number 3, due to potential conflict of interest, I own real estate in the property in that area.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-1.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is, this is the time and place to set a public hearing on item J4, Public Works Department. The subject is fiscal year 2021 resolution to levy assessments in the Manley Beach Maintenance District, MAD4. The recommendation of the City Council acting as a legislative body for the Manley Beach Maintenance District. 1, hold a public hearing to receive public testimony regarding the proposed fiscal year 2021-22 assessment for the Manley Beach Maintenance District. And 2, to adopt a resolution fixing the special assessment in the Manley Beach Maintenance District for fiscal year 2021-22. We start off with the city clerk's certification of publication and any written communication, if any. Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor. There was a legal notice for this public hearing published in Vida newspaper on June 3rd, 2021, and the city clerk's office has not received any written communications on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Assistant Public Works Director, Mr. Hollett, in accordance with measure, and posted a video presentation regarding this item, and it's available to answer any brief clarifying questions council members you may have before we take public testimony on this item. Council will deliberate after the public hearing has been closed. Okay. So I'm now going to open the public hearing portion. Members of the public were invited to sign up to speak on this item on the city website. Anyone who has signed up before the deadline has 3 minutes to speak on this item. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers on this item?
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Zaragoza, we have 2 public speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we have Douglas Partell, excuse me, followed by Lauren Fife, or Fifi. I'm sorry, Fife. 2 speakers.
Douglas Partell.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you for this time to speak. It was a good move on the city manager's part. I want to also commend him for taking the parking lot out of that area that requires maintenance. But my question is, why now in June 15th of 2021 is that parking lot now being taken out? In 2015, 2016, and I believe even into 2017 is when NBS did a comprehensive audit of the boundaries, of the levies, of the admin fees, a comprehensive assessment of the assessment districts. And there were several of them that they took out the general benefit areas. And so that was a mistake that they were in there to begin with, according to the law, that assessment districts are of a special assessment because it's a special benefit to those property owners in particular, the way it's stated in the law in the legislature. So I'm wondering also, are there other areas of general benefit that are still included in the burden that these property owners are facing with these costs of assessments to their property taxes? Also, there is an area near Embassy Suites that the grass hasn't been mowed. A gentleman, Jim Carr, went out and bought a lawnmower and started mowing it. And I know we got an apportionment that Mayor Zaragoza put forward, and that was a great idea. I think that was a great move. I like that. For 34 parks, that the mowing would be increased in those areas. And this is an iconic area. I mean, my family has enjoyed going to that particular park and visitors from all over the world come here. And so this is an area that it draws a lot of revenue to our city by visitors. It's a very iconic area. And I know we've had budget problems in the past, but I think there's a lot of confusion for folks as far as what's in and outside of these assessment districts, and MAD number 4, and even the name MAD, WAD, it's very confusing to folks. So, you know, it's great that the parking lot's out. So my question is why has it been in there for, you know, over 5 years? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lauren, F-I-F-E. Lauren.
Miss Lauren Fifey?
Fifey.
You may unmute by pressing *6.
Okay. It's actually Lauren Fife.
My apologies, sir. You have 3 minutes to
No problem.
speak. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the council. My name is Lauren Fife. I'm a longtime Oxnard resident. My wife and I live within the boundaries of Mandalay Beach Maintenance Assessment District 4, also known as Oxnard State Beach. I'll refer to it for convenience tonight as District 4. While the beach, parklands, walkways, bike paths, and parking lots located in District 4 are completely open to the general public and a general benefit to the city, maintenance in District 4 over the years has been funded by an outdated arrangement involving the city, the Embassy Suites Hotel, and the 440 property owners located in the colony at Mandalay Beach, whom I represent as a chairman of a committee created to focus on District 4 issues. During recent years, these beautiful public resources have been allowed to deteriorate. Public beach access, particularly access for the disabled and for emergency vehicles, has been severely limited. Garbage goes uncollected for extended periods. Green belts grow wild or are buried by sand, and drug paraphernalia lies abandoned in areas where children could be injured by it. This area should be one of Oxnard's finest gems. Instead, neglect, underfunding, and misguided efforts to manufacture sand dunes where none existed have now resulted in out-of-control sand piles that bury pedestrian walkways and city irrigation equipment, block handicapped beach access, make bike paths and fire lanes impassable, and fill up the public parking lots while providing cover for illegal drug users and individuals shooting off illegal fireworks. Restoring Oxnard State Beach to its natural state of beauty should be a strategic priority for our city. It certainly fits within the city's infrastructure and natural resources strategic priority to preserve and improve our parks and natural resources. It also fits within the city's quality of life and public safety strategic priorities. Our city should extend Oxnard Beach Park's boundaries to include District 4's public green belts, walkways, and beach. They're already indistinguishable to the general public. Return the topography of Oxnard State Beach to its original natural state and start over again from scratch, working with the Coastal Commission to create a more environmentally friendly, stable, and sustainable beach. As part of this effort, the giant sand piles looming over the handicapped walkways and fire lanes should be returned to the beach, and the invasive, non-native, and poisonous plants the city planted years ago should be removed and replaced with native plants. Taking these relatively inexpensive but effective steps will begin to repair damage to the soil, will protect habitats for shoreline birds and other wildlife, will prevent beach erosion, will ensure emergency vehicle and public access to the beach, particularly handicapped accessibility, will promote and protect public health and safety, will restore green belts, park areas, and parking spaces lost to encroaching sand, and will provide protection against wave run-up and rising sea levels. We appreciate the consideration we've received from our council member Bert Perillo and city manager Alexander Nguyen, the spirit of cooperation we've encountered with the City Public Works Department, particularly Steve Howlett, and we all look forward to working closely with the city to restore the beauty of this invaluable public resource. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for your statement. If we have no other public speakers, I'm closing the public testimony at this time. Mr. City Manager, want to share a couple of comments?
Yes, just a few quick responses for both of the public speakers, starting with the second one first. I just want to say, likewise, I look forward to meeting with all of you and working through these issues. But I want to remind everyone, again, this is one of those legacy districts where, because of the cap on the assessments, there's really not enough money to do hardly anything. So it's very challenging. And over the years, as I stated before, Coastal Commission regulations changed my understanding, and I haven't had the time to dig into this very deep personally, but I will over this summer. But my understanding is one of the things that happened here is the Coastal Commission told us we had to make the sand dunes even higher. So we'll look through and vet all of this out and figure out a path forward. Now, as to Mr. Partell, I explained why we're doing it now, right? My concern here is the ADA access and the fact that this district can't afford to take care of it on a routine basis. And Mr. Partell referred to 2015, 2016, and 2017, I believe. And I just want to remind Mr. Partell, I wasn't here. So I'm neither Karnak nor do I have a time machine. I can't explain that, right? But I'm taking action now. And again, as with everything else this administration is focused on, we confront the problems and we figure out how best to resolve them in order to move the community forward. And that's what we're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Council members, any questions? Councilmember Tehran.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank the speakers, but I also want to thank the residents of the district who reached out and made their voices heard. We heard them at the previous meeting, received emails from them, and I just appreciate them reaching out to voice their concerns. And I appreciate the city manager and city staff doing their role and being willing to meet with them, but also see what we can do to make adjustments to their current district to be able to make the changes that, as of right now, whatever we can do can make it more appropriate. As was mentioned, it's unfortunate that they are stuck at 40 some odd dollars a year, I think it is, for their district. I hope that after the meeting, there can be some really critical thought that happens into where they would like to go as a district. And the last thing I'll say is I think I'm really sorry. I think Karnak is a Johnny Carson reference. Is that right? I vaguely think, okay, I see head nods. Yes. Okay. So I do get the reference. Thank you for that, Mr. City Manager. And thank you for the time, Mayor.
Councilmember Perello, thank you.
Yes, I'd like to thank the staff for working this on the city manager and the speakers. But again, ladies and gentlemen, a question was asked earlier in the evening on a previous item, and Mr. Mr. Beck is going to get back to us with it. The residents of Oxnard need to understand something. There's a city that was built, and then it was expanded. And in the expansion, residents in the city of Oxnard, through their elected officials, decided to put all the burden of the landscaping, the fees, the schools, and what I'm very particular involved with was River Park when it was created, on the people that bought the houses, not the city, not the residents in the entire school districts. So specifically on River Park, everything within the boundaries was going to be taken care of by the residents with the extra fees, including paying for the school. And there was a big fight at one time that, well, if they're paying for the school, how come people from outside of that boundary are sending kids to that school? I am not sure how that was resolved. I don't have kids and I didn't follow it that far, but I was there for the recall of that school board. And I saw what happened there. And I saw what happened when Shea Development and the companies came in and they kept asking for more, and then they couldn't do more. And then they start falling back on the city and they want the city to take over. Now, the stuff that's already been pointed out down at the beach, if there is a fixed amount of money that you're going to be charged every year to get a certain quality of service, I don't know about you, but the same pants that I fit in 10 years ago, they don't fit anymore. The same shoes I had 10 years ago, they don't fit anymore. And they cost a lot more. I don't know of anything that's cheaper. The air, the water, anything that's cheaper. But when you have a fixed amount of money and you want to do the same amount of work, and we have individuals that continually harp on what happened in the past, what happened in the past. I'm grateful the city manager has enough guts to say he wasn't here. There are some members of this council that were here. There's a member of the council that's back on the council that was here at that time. But there were residents in the city of Oxnard need to know what percentage of the city is CFD funded by the residents in that area and what percentage is funded by the general fund. If the residents want to do away with the extra expenses, it will be barren. And then it will be up to the residents in the city. What do they want to do through their elected officials? This is a good question and a good discussion to have in the future, but there's no free lunch. There's no free lunch. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, council member. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion on this item. Council members?
I will move approval, Mayor.
Okay.
I'll
is that
second.
Lopez? Was that Lopez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez, and second by Tehran. Councilmember Tehran. Roll call.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasua,
Aye.
Councilmember Turan,
Yes.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Councilmember Perrello,
Yes.
Councilmember Madrigal.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Our next item is item at this time and place to set a public hearing on item J5, which is Public Works Department. The subject is fiscal year 2021 resolution to levy assessment and waterways maintenance district. The recommendation of the City Council acting as a legislative body for the Waterways Maintenance Assessment District. 1, hold a public hearing regarding the proposed assessments for the Water Maintenance District for fiscal year 2021-22. And 2, to adopt a resolution fixing the special assessment in the Waterway Maintenance District for fiscal year 21-22. We started with the city clerk's certification of publication and written communications, if any. Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor. Mayor, there was a legal notice for this public hearing published in Vida newspaper on June 3rd, 2021, and the city clerk's office has not received written communications on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Assistant Public Works Director, Mr. Holloway, in accordance with Measure M, posted a video presentation regarding this item, and it's available for answers and a brief clarifying question council members may have before we take public testimony on this item. Council will deliberate after the public hearing has been closed. And of course, if you have any questions, then we can also call them. So the following question, for the following questions, I'm now going to open the public hearing, a testimony portion of the public hearing. Members of the public are invited to sign up to speak on this item, the city website. Anyone who signed up before the deadline has 3 minutes to speak on this item. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers at this time?
Mayor Zaragoza, we do not have any public speakers for this public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we don't have any speakers on this item. So I'm going to close the public hearing. Council members, do we have any comments on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
First by Councilman Perrello,
Okay.
second by Councilmember Madrigal. Roll call.
Councilmember Perrello,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Councilmember Madrigal,
Aye.
Councilmember Basua,
Aye.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Turan.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our next item is the Public Works Department. Subject is a grant application for FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. The recommendation of the City Council adopt a resolution. 1, authorizing the city manager to submit an application for $3,750,000 in grant funds to the Governor's Office Emergency Services, Cal OES, to be used for Mandalay Bay seawalls construction retrofit. The grant will pay for $3,750,000 or 75% of the total project cost, and has a match requirement of $1,250,000 or 25% of the total project cost. 2, to authorize the city manager or the public works director to execute the grant agreement and provide assurances and agreements required by Cal OES pertaining to the open and future disaster assistance grants for a period of 3 years, and authorizing the finance director or designee to submit financial reports and grant claims and approve special budget appropriations for the use of grant funds, and authorizing the director of public works or designee to submit non-financial reports. Again, this item did not originate with the committee, and the grant timeline did not allow enough time to go to both committee and city council. So again, this was viewed as required by Measure M as a pre-recorded presentation. So council members, we do have a speaker on this item, and I'd like to call the speaker Audrey Keller. That's not, I'm sorry. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
K3, Mayor.
I am sorry, that's K3. Okay, let me see. So anyway, council members, any questions on this item? If not, we need a motion.
Is there a speaker on the item, Mayor?
Excuse me?
Is there a speaker on the item?
No.
No, sir, there's not.
No.
Okay. I have a question then, Mayor. Yes.
Go ahead.
Appreciate the opportunity the other day to tour the area. But as is very common, and I'm sure all the council members can either chip in or not, there's a lot of people that take the comments from people that come to city council when they make accusations and they make comments about this and about that. On this particular item, Mr. Beck, we're looking for $3,750,000. And there may be some that think, well, that's going to fix all the seawalls. Can you please explain what this money will be used for? Because the amount of fixing all the seawalls in the past has been a much larger number. And I don't know in my district how many people are paying attention. I know a lot of them are doing a lot of work and carrying the load for a lot of people that are not paying attention. Please, Mr. Beck.
Yeah, Councilmember Perillo, thank you for the opportunity to comment on this. I think that is a very good point. This is an opportunity for the city to receive grant funding. It is from FEMA, which comes with certain amount of strings. And what I mean by that is that it requires a certain standard of repair. The city has conducted 2 studies to look at all the seawalls in the waterfront area. One study for repairing those seawalls, those that are damaged, is estimated at about $50 million. Another study to do a complete replacement, retrofit at new standards is estimated about $200 million. So while we are certainly pleased to have this opportunity to receive these grant dollars, it is only going to address a small component of the seawall repairs that are needed in the area, and by no means is going to address all the challenges that are out there today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beck. I appreciate that. And we're on the record, so if people want to go back and listen, they can hear it. But again, Mr. Beck, thank you very much for enlightening the public on that. Thank you.
And thank you for that.
That's my only question there.
Okay, do we have a motion on this item?
I'll move the action on this item.
A motion by Perillo and second, I'm sorry to hear the second.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, Lopez. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem was, okay. First by Councilman Perillo and second by Mayor Pro Tem. Roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Perillo,
Yes.
Councilmember Madrigal,
Aye.
Councilmember Basua,
Aye.
Councilmember Turan,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Our next item is Housing Department. Is subject to Housing Authority, low rent, public housing and housing choice voucher program. And this is for budget year 21-22, and the recommendation of the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority of the City of Oxnard Authority. One, adopt a resolution approving the recommendation of $7,175,311 operating budget for the low rent public housing program fiscal year 21-22 is presented for each project area, and approve and authorize the use of $703,336 of unrestricted cash to fund the project deficit. And two, adopt a resolution approving the recommendation of $25,128,842 operating budget for the Housing Choice Voucher Program fiscal year 21-22, and approve and authorize the use of $551,267 of unrestricted cash to fund the project deficit. The Community Service Public Service Housing and Development Committee approved this 2-0, and is required by Measure M as a pre-recorded presentation. And council members, if we have any information needed, Emilio Ramirez is available for that. Any questions or concerns on this item? Councilmember Madrigal.
Yes, thank you. I happened to be absent the day of the committee meeting. I had work commitment issues, but I do have a quick question. First, I know that we are running on a deficit, so thank you that we have those reserves to be able to function this, especially since housing has become such a large issue, or actually a larger issue in the last probably 15 months. It was a big issue before that, and it's just kind of increased. My one question, because of everything that's been going on, and I know how so many people are behind on their rents to begin with, how far behind, or are we even behind, and are some of the residents behind on their rent? First of all, when it comes to this, because I know of all the different issues and circumstances people have faced over the 15 months. And if they are, what's the plan on behalf of the city? And actually, I'll just leave it at that for first.
Thank you, Councilman Emilio Ramirez, Housing Director. Relative to the participants in Section 8 and the tenants in public housing, none of them are behind on rent. The reason is that when there is a reduction in a person's income, i.e. during the pandemic, there is an income adjustment. And that income adjustment causes their portion of the rent to go down and the subsidy to go up. And that has occurred. That definitely has occurred. Those income adjustments occurred, but they have been done faithfully. And as a result, there's been no one that's behind on their rent because of that structure that occurs in the subsidy or the HAP payments.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Housing Authority member Jose, do you have any questions on this item? This is a Housing Authority Board member body also. Do you have any questions you might want to ask Mr. Ramirez? Commissioner Andrade?
No, I'm okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. Councilmember, Board Member Perello?
Mayor, I would like to thank Councilman Madrigal for asking the question and Mr. Ramirez for the answer. I have gotten questions like that, and Mr. Madrigal, thank you very much for asking that question. Appreciate the answer, Mr. Ramirez.
Thank you so much, board members and Housing Authority board members and City Council members. Do we have a motion on this item?
I'll make the motion.
I second.
It was a motion by Perello. Second.
I
by
second.
Commissioner Andrade, second.
Andrade, second.
Okay.
Yes, I second.
Okay, thank you. Roll call.
Councilmember Turan,
Yes.
Councilmember Basua,
Aye.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Aye.
Councilmember Madrigal,
Aye.
Councilmember Perello,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrade.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you.
Thank
Our
you.
next item, or last item, is a Public Works grant application for Ocean Protection Council Proposition 1 grant program. The recommendation of the City Council to adopt a resolution, 1, authorizing the city manager to submit an application for $1,074,100 in grant funds to the Ocean Protection Council Proposition 1 grant program to be used for the Channel Islands Harbor Water Quality Remediation Study. The grant will cover $1,074,100 or 82% of the total project cost, and the city will match it with $230,000 or 18% of the total project cost. And 2, authorize the city manager or public works director to execute grant agreements, authorizing the finance director or designate to submit financial reports and grant claims and approve special budget appropriations for the use of the grant funds, and authorize a director of public works or designate to submit non-financial reports. This item originated in committee, originate in committee. The grant timeline did not allow enough time to go to both committee and the city council. And as required by Measure M, there's a pre-recorded presentation by video. City council members, do you have any questions? And we have Mr. Beck to answer any questions on this item. Council members, any questions on this item? If not, we do have Councilmember Perello.
Yes. Is there a speaker on this item? And the second thing is, I appreciate
My
this coming
apologies.
forward. Okay. All right.
You're absolutely right. My apologies. We do have a one speaker on this item, and it's Audrey Keller. 3 minutes.
Miss Audrey Keller. Miss Audrey Keller, you may unmute by pressing *6.
Good evening. I'm Audrey Keller, Chair of the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council, SYNC. Thank you to Eric Hummel for presenting this Ocean Protection Council grant opportunity. This proposal is a product of the SYNC community working together with the City Manager's Office and Public Works team. Tonight, I'm so happy to share that we have received many letters of support for this project, including but not limited to citizen-based groups like Harbor and Beach Community Alliance, our County Harbor Director, and today from Senator Monique Limon. While the proposal shows a 5-figure in-kind contribution going forward from SYNC volunteers, the presentation doesn't show all the volunteerism efforts we've given over the last 3 years, especially over COVID. We have not stopped educating, outreach, and messaging to our residents and public officials. It is no small feat to get the state of California's Water Board to accept our waterways as part of their budget by funding laboratory testing that contributes to this grant funding. It was SYNC volunteers speaking at every Water Board meeting that got us to the official water testing date just this January 20th, 2021. And I could say we've completed 50% of the annual volunteer water testing as of June. If we're lucky enough to be selected for the $1 million grant funding out of 19 other candidates in the state, it is just the beginning. Oxnard was the first, but is not alone, as there are 18 other once-through cooling plants along the coast mandated for closure, of course, including our Ormond Beach facility. Our harbor project, once executed, will put us on the map for leading with environmentally sound solutions. Other cities will look to Oxnard's leadership. Thank you, Mr. City Manager, Mr. Mayor, and council members for listening to the harbor and beach residents, believing in our SYNC mission, which is a swimmable, fishable, and peaceful harbor, and helping us paddle together towards the first of a multi-million-dollar milestone. Thank you very much.
Audrey Keller, thank you so much for all your work, and thank all the folks there at the harbor. Thank you tremendously. Mr. Perello, Councilmember Perello.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Ms. Keller and all the people. She's understating it. Tremendous amount of people, a lot of people doing work, putting money into it, their own sweat, blood, and labor. We're hoping for a very good outcome, and this would be a tremendous coup because, as Ms. Keller stated, this is not the only power plant with an issue, and hopefully we can get in. And council members, I don't say this just because I represent that district. That district is a big driver for a lot of things in the city of Oxnard. The harbor is a big driver. And with this agreement with the county moving forward, tremendous opportunities down there for everybody. But it'll take some work and it'll take some effort on all parts. I hope this is successful and I hope you can approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, it's a part of the partnership that we work with the county and the city, and thank all the folks there at the harbor for all the hard work. Councilmember Tehran.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would like to echo what Councilmember Perillo had said, and thanking all the residents who volunteered so much time and effort into this work that we have here in front of us, leading to this grant application. And I want to also thank our staff for moving this forward. As we could see from the pictures from the presentation, there is a significant change that had happened as a result of things that happened within our city specific to that power plant. And I'm not a biologist or a marine biologist, but looking at that, I hope that there's something that can be done, and this grant may be one way to do that. And I would also like to give thanks to Mr. Hummel as well. I had the pleasure of working with him a number of times when I was on the Parks and Rec Commission, and he's written and coordinated many successful grants with the city. And so I really appreciate his work, the residents' work, and all staff's work on this. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, council member. So we need a motion for this item.
So moved.
Councilmember Perillo first. Do we need a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Tehran. Roll call.
Councilmember Madrigal,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Tehran,
Yes.
Mayor Partell McDonald,
Aye.
Councilmember Basua,
Aye.
Councilmember Perillo,
Yes.
Mayor Zaragoza.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes
And
7-0.
Thank you. And council members, members of the audience, that is the last item on the agenda. So we are adjourned. Thank you.
Happy
Thank
Father's
you.
Day.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Mhm.